Are you ready? Oh.
Wait. Oh, right here.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The Ridgewood Village Council. This is a public workshop. The time is 7:31 p.m. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Councilwoman Perrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Reynolds.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Seaton.
Here.
Councilman Vagianos.
Here.
And Mayor Knudsen.
Here. Please join us for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join us for a moment of silence for our men and women serving our nation, all of our first responders, and all those people suffering throughout the world. Thank you. With that, we'll go to public comments, not to exceed 3 minutes per person. Please come to the microphone, state your name and address clearly for the record. Good evening. Ellie, make sure that's on.
Yeah, I'm
You know the
Ellie Gruber,
routine.
229 South Irving. I'm here on behalf of Ridgewood Wildscape. I just want to say that Sunday, thanks to your resolution, thanks to Chris Rudishauser for preparing the resolution, thanks to Chris for arranging that we could get all the equipment from the water pollution control facility, boots, gloves, rakes, whatever we needed. And thanks to them, we had a really successful cleanup on Sunday. The weather cooperated. I don't want to put a jinx on it, but in 20 years, we've never had a bad day for one of our walks or cleanups. Probably going to rain next time. Anyway, I just want to say that it was really co-sponsored by the Ridgewood Library and the Ridgewood High School Green Club. I cannot say enough about these kids. And the supervisor, Miles Liu, was fantastic. They, of course, we put out notices, only long pants, only long shirts, sturdy shoes, and they all came in flip-flops and a shorts and a T-shirt. But they went into the mud. They dragged out so much stuff, tires, shopping cart, balls, plastic, tons of bottles and cans. They worked solid for an hour and a half without stopping. And it was a lot of work because you had to, I know if you're familiar with Gypsy Pond, you have to go into the mud and then past that to where all the wild brush is, and it's sticky and there's lots of thorns there. They were absolutely fantastic. I just hope you realize what a service they're doing, because without getting rid of all this stuff, and there's much more, without getting rid of this stuff, the water doesn't flow freely, our birds and fish suffer. So it's a Ridgewood property. We do like to help keep it clean, but I hope people realize that when they live streets abutting these wild spaces, such as Mountain, which abuts Gypsy Pond, a lot of people just take their brush and toss it over their fence. We saw logs. We saw things that did not come from the woods. People just think it's great to dump their leaves and stuff like that. So I'm urging everybody who abuts a stream, that includes Hohokus Brook, wherever you live, just be careful. Keep your trash in your own yard. and don't put it in public spaces. Anyway, I want to thank you all for the permission to do it, and it was just a great event. And I want to thank Councilwoman Perrin, who got the Rotary people there, so I appreciate that. If you go onto our website, you can see some great photos of the cleanup. Thanks.
Website name. What is the website, Ellie? It's it's Wildscape. It's Ridgewood Wildscape.
Oh, ridgewoodwildscape.org.
Very good. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
Yes, the kids were indefatigable, and please convey our thanks to the Wildscape Association also because you made it educational. The ecologists who came and,
Oh, yes.
and gave us a tour really taught us things that I didn't know before.
Yeah.
So
We
it
got a
was-
young graduate from Raripo College, got a degree in ecology, and she's terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Catherine Schmidt, 123 South Irving Street. I'm here today because I just wanted to speak in favor of the concept of grab and go. We have a garage for long stays, and I'm really glad that that's here, and we also have parking areas around town and on the street for longer-term parking. But I think we need more to encourage more short-term options. I know people can always put just a quarter in the kiosk and park for 20 minutes, but that to me is not as much of an issue as encouraging turnover so that more people can be coming into town to do a lot of quick things. So whether that's picking up or dropping off at a restaurant, picking up from a restaurant, dropping off at the UPS store, dropping off at the shoemaker, coming in for a quick gift, going to the post office, picking up a book. These are things that if people know that they can easily come in and do them, they probably will do them more here than going to Barnes & Noble or going someplace else. If this can be done on a complimentary basis for visitors through grab and go, as we have done before, I think that's wonderful. But if for some reason that's not a direction we can go in, I really would still like to encourage some way to have more 15-minute parking spaces so that people can come in and out quickly, a lot more people can come in and out quickly, and we can just encourage more people to be using the town conveniently. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Good evening, Mahmoud Hamza, 528 Amsterdam Avenue. I'm not here today to talk about the trees. I want to thank you for everything you've been doing for us. I have two sets of comments. I'm going to make 3 minutes and maybe later on another 3 minutes if you allow me. Talking about the grab and go. While I do agree that more foot traffic is good for the business in our downtown, and it may add to that walking is healthy, and that's what we've been asking for, and the opportunity to enjoy our downtown. But there are some scenarios I'm hoping that you consider before you make your final decision. And these are, I experienced it personally. If you go and grab your shirts after they've been ironed or whatever, try to carry them, with the hangers, walk to your car, and it's far, it's a very painful experience. Okay, and really, at this moment, like I wish I had place that I can just jump in and put my stuff in. The other scenario, Walgreens, you want to pick up your prescription. Walgreens, they close early. They called me, I have a prescription, I had to run there. It was 5 minutes before they closed down. I stopped the car, I ran into the store, got my drug and my medication, came back, and I had a ticket. So I paid a lot of money to get my prescription at that time. This is, I think, one scenario that having a grab and go would be very helpful. The third scenario is, I work remotely, but in my business, we eat lunch while we're working. So if I want to grab lunch, I really want to go, make the call, go there, grab the lunch, and go home and be in front of the computer again. It's very painful, but this is unfortunately the reality of life. I hope you will consider these scenarios, and I think many others, to extend this grab and go privilege that we have in the village. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mahmoud. With that, we will close public comment and go on to our manager's report.
Okay. I want to just respond to a couple of questions from the public that were posed the last time we were here. There was something about the budget newsletter not getting to one of our residents who now lives in the Benjamin. The postal worker who normally delivers for that area was out that day due to illness. But the distribution is done through each individual apartment complex. And when we did emphasize to the post office that when we do a mailing from the village, whether it's a budget newsletter or recreation programs or something from the recycling department or the water department, that it gets to every single person within that building. And so all of them understood that, and so hopefully going forward we won't have these issues any longer. Also, the paving of Franklin Avenue, Chris Rudishauser, our village engineer, indicated that he was told that Franklin Avenue will be paved sometime this year. May 3rd, yesterday, Ridgewood has a new tree ordinance, requires a permit to remove trees on all private property and replacement of those trees or a monetary fee towards planting trees in another location. Today, the new state law for the ban on plastic and paper bags at grocery store began. Essentially, everyone has to bring their own reusable bag for all shopping they do at grocery stores. It also includes the clamshell styrofoam containers, which are used by many eateries. As of tomorrow, all village offices will have new extensions. Please listen to the full menu, or you may dial 0 to be connected to our receptionist for assistance. Stolen motor vehicles in Ridgewood, I just want to emphasize this again. In Ridgewood, in April, there were 7 stolen motor vehicles and 8 unsuccessful attempts. In 2022 so far, it was 14 stolen motor vehicles statewide in March, 1,231, and stolen motor vehicles statewide for the entire year so far is 4,139. And all the stolen vehicles in Ridgewood had key fobs in them. Please remove those key fobs. And in addition, sometimes cars are left running, and also there has been an increase in carjackings. Statewide, there have been 74 so far this year. So please remember to bring your key fobs into your home. Graden Pool preseason in-person badge sales, Saturdays, May 14th and May 21st, 10 a.m. to noon at the Graden Pool badge office. Please bring documentation of Ridgewood residency. Graden opening day is Saturday, June 4th at 10 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Ridgewood Parks and Recreation Summer Day Camp for grades 1 to 6 is being offered weekdays, Tuesday, June 28th to Friday, August 5th. Registration is on Community Pass, and August mini camps are registering now as well. The Ridgewood Health Department will be hosting a Moderna COVID-19 vaccine booster clinic May 11th, 2 to 3 p.m. here in Village Hall on the ground floor. Pre-registration is required. Open to Ridgewood residents, school employees, and village employees. You may register by going on to ridgewoodnj.net/COVID-registration. The link will be open from May 8th at 8:30 a.m. to May 9th at 4:30 p.m. If you try to register before those dates, you cannot do so. Chamber of Commerce Spring Sidewalk Sale Days. If you're shopping for new spring fashions, looking for bargains, come on in and enjoy dining at a new or favorite restaurant. It'll be May 12th to 14th, and we'll have entertainment for the little ones with Touch a Truck. Touch a Truck is back in person. It will be held on Thursday, May 12th from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. outside of Memorial Park at Van Ness Square. The event provides young children an opportunity to get close and touch several large village trucks and smaller equipment. There are also children's activities, story time, as well as giveaways from several departments. On May 15th, the Ridgewood Guild will sponsor a music fest for a local nonprofit team, which is TEEEM, the Empathy, Equality, Entrepreneurship Mission in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square from noon to 8 p.m. It's a family-friendly day out. There'll be food trucks, there'll be a beer and wine garden, face painting for children, and live music from extraordinary musicians. The cost is $20 per adult and free for students, and all proceeds benefit team humanitarian projects throughout the world. Tickets are at www.benefitconcertforteam.com. Senior bus is operated by the Village of Ridgewood. It's a 12-passenger bus. It requires a reservation in advance for Tuesdays or Thursdays, and then also for every other Wednesday, which is the second and fourth week. They go to ShopRite and Wyckoff with slightly less riders, allowing enough room for the grocery bags. Now that we're in the warmer weather, just remember that any amount of standing water on your property can attract and breed mosquitoes. So please eliminate standing water on your property. Remove water from swimming pool covers. Small depressions in your yard can be filled to prevent the collection of water. Make sure your windows and door screens are properly fitted and holes patched. And also, obviously, there's a wide variety of repellents available to provide relief from mosquitoes. If you're interested in an outing to the 2022 Philadelphia Flower Show, Ridgewood Parks and Recreation is offering a day trip scheduled for June 13th. Further details and reservations can be made on Community Pass or in person or by mail to the stable at 259 North Maple Avenue. We're seeking local superheroes to be school crossing guards to join the Ridgewood team. If you're interested in working a flexible schedule of 2 hours a day on school days, please contact the area supervisor at 201-969-7182. Please sign up for e-notices to get all the information from the village. And then our village council upcoming meetings, May 11th next week is our public meeting, as is June 8th. Those both begin at 8 p.m. And then May 25th and June 1st are village council work sessions. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilwoman Perrin?
Thank you, Mayor. Toiletry Tuesday, which is an outreach for the Ridgewood, sponsored by the Ridgewood High School students, was quite successful. And if you missed it, since this is Older Americans Month, you can still donate. They're going to be having a collection over at Ridgecrest, which is the housing for low-income seniors. That's at 9 Ridge Road, and it will be this coming Tuesday at 10 a.m. to noon. So if you want to donate toilet paper, soap, dishwashing liquid, that sort of thing, they would love to receive them. The Wildscapes cleanup was really wonderful. I was amazed to see that there was an entire picnic table and bench that were pulled out of the brook. It was just amazing what we found. So Rotary Club really enjoyed participating in that. At the Central Business District Advisory Committee meeting, we discussed grab and go and wrote a recommendation to the council, and I will bring that up when that comes up in the agenda. We also discussed the pedestrian plaza, and their recommendation from the committee was that it should be more than once a month, because it is so important for the economic livelihood, the economic prospering of the businesses downtown. We also discussed the 20-mile-an-hour proposal for the speed limit downtown, and people thought that bump outs might be a little more effective. And we're going to meet again the second Thursday this month, 8:30 via Zoom, and the public is welcome. We have 2 openings for business owners on the CBDAC, and the time to submit an application, if anybody would like to join, has been extended to May 16th. The Open Space Committee had a tour of the Vallow Cemetery that was conducted by our committee member, Yu Sun. He did a lot of research, and the tour was very well attended. People really thought it was excellent. And we're going to have another tour of another open space in Ridgewood on May 14th by our own Janet Fricke, and that will be at 10 a.m., meeting at the bridge on Spring Avenue between South Irving and Brookside, Park on Brookside. And it's just a lovely area, and everybody's welcome. I'd like to say happy birthday to Linda McNamara. She is a longtime avid watcher of council meetings, and we kind of miss her. She's always been an astute critic of what goes on here. So happy birthday to Linda. That was her birthday was Monday, actually. Green Ridgewood, I did want to get back to you all that during the Daffodil Festival and Earth Day, the Cahoots contest winner was Greg Iyanga, and he won a very powerful battery-operated leaf blower. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Councilman Vagianos.
Thank you, Susan. I have a very brief report. The Fields Committee met yesterday, and the good news is that all the fields are now open, including vets and citizens, which had been closed down. The not as good news is that many of the fields are not in great condition because we just don't have enough fields. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Paul. Councilwoman Reynolds.
Thank you, Mayor. The Project Pride Committee met on Wednesday, April 20th. We're in the home stretch right now for the CBD planting, which will occur on Sunday morning, May 22nd at 8 a.m. We are still in need of more volunteers, so if anybody would like to help, I see somebody out there that I think would like to help, just email me at lreynolds@ridgewoodnj.net. It's only going to be about 3 hours from 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. on Sunday, May 22nd, and we'd love to have you there. Citizen Safety Advisory Committee met on Thursday, April 21st. It was reported by the village engineer, and actually our village manager also mentioned that the resurfacing of Franklin Avenue between North Maple and North Broad Street will occur this year in 2022. Yay. Additional sidewalk construction on West Glen Avenue has been budgeted for 2022, and that will continue. Probably won't be finished this year because there's some difficult areas and walls need to be built, but it will continue. The village will be funding the proposed safety banners at approximately 12 different locations in the CBD. Sergeant Chuck provided a compilation of Ridgewood's police investigation reports for the year 2020. Mr. Prieto, a member, provided the police report for the East Ridgewood Avenue North Broad Street accident that happened on February 21st. The driver said he was distracted and he did not see the pedestrian. Sergeant Chuck also reported that since 2019, there have been 5 crashes of all different types, and since 2010, there's been 17 crashes of all different types that have occurred in Ridgewood. They were typically low in severity, which is great. Sergeant Chuck said rear-end crashes at stop signs, that the stop sign controlled Broad Street approach were among the most frequent type of accidents. Upon discussion, CSAC concluded that there were really no practical measures to recommend that would upgrade the safety or alter the conditions that may have contributed to the reported crash in February. They spoke about the proposed 20-mile-per-hour speed limit in the CBD, and they really were not sure that it would help anything, and they also worried that it may not be permitted by New Jersey statute. The next meeting of CSAC will be on May 19th. And then last night, the planning board met. We memorialized the resolution for photometry on South Broad Street. So that should be open hopefully very soon. We discussed a report that was prepared by our former planner, Mary Ann Bucci Carter, regarding fencing. She compared 3 towns, Ridgewood, Midland Park, and Brick Township. And we had a lively discussion. It seems to be some people want us to be able to have 6-foot fences, some people don't. So we did ask our planning board secretary, who is also the secretary of the zoning board, to come back and let us know how many applications they have in a typical year where people are coming for variances for fencing, and then we will continue our conversation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Deputy Mayor Seaton.
Thank you, Mayor. The Community Center Advisory Board meets tomorrow in the Annie Zusi Youth Lounge at 5 p.m. And then the Shade Tree Commission meets next Tuesday. And that's all I have right now. Thank you.
That was it.
That's
Okay, good. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm up. Okay. The 112th Annual Ridgewood 4th of July celebration is scheduled for Monday, July 4th, 2022. This year's theme, Let Freedom Ring, celebrates the history of our great nation, highlighting the importance of freedom for all. Let Freedom Ring is defined as a statement that the ideals of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness should be spread across the earth and allowed to flourish everywhere. Visit ridgewoodjuly4.net for more information, including how to volunteer and donate, along with special sponsorship and underwriting opportunities. As a reminder, we always have our float contest with all of the student floats, the schools competing one against the other, the elementary schools. Last year, the 2021 winners, which was an amazing event. It was an amazing parade 2021 because we didn't have a parade in 2020 due to COVID, so the fact that we pulled it off in 2021 was amazing, and the effort by the schools was just incredible. And as a reminder, the second place best school float went to Somerville School, most creative float, Willard, most creative float, second place, Orchard. Best portrayal of parade theme, Hawes, second place, sorry. Best personnel and costumes, first place, Ridge School. And best overall float went to the Travell School. So all those parents out there and students working on the floats, it's never too early to begin floating your ideas for July 4th, so get to it. And again, visit ridgewoodjuly4.net for more information. The Library Board of Trustees met last Tuesday. It was a quiet meeting with not much to report. Remember to visit ridgewoodlibrary.org for more information about offerings and upcoming events, including Be a Maker, Bath Bombs, an in-person program at the Ridgewood Public Library Thursday, May 12th, 7 to 8 p.m. You can learn how to make your own fragrant and fizzy mineral bath bombs from scratch to take home, relax, and enjoy. Anyone under the age of 12 must be accompanied by an adult. It's $5 per participant. And again, that's ridgewoodlibrary.org for more information about this and other upcoming events. Access met last week. That is our Community Access Network. Another fairly quiet meeting. We're continuing our efforts to advocate and advance work and business opportunities for our special needs adults, which is a particularly good complement to our special needs housing for both independent and supportive special needs adults located at the corner of Maple Ave and Ridgewood Ave. We have actually been in contact with a 501c3 organization looking to establish roots in our central business district as an opportunity for our special needs adults to have gainful employment. Access is working to move this forward, and hopefully we'll have some positive information and news to share soon. Yesterday morning, I spent a couple of hours at Stop and Shop helping management and staff distribute hundreds, possibly thousands, of reusable shopping bags and magnetic chip clips. Is that what they're called, chip clips? In advance of today's New Jersey plastic and paper bag ban. It was actually really wonderful to see so many familiar faces, and also great to learn how receptive our residents and shoppers were to this change. I actually meant to bring a bag to take one and bring it here in a chip clip to show everyone what Stop and Shop handed out to so many people yesterday. But I was so enthusiastically handing everything out, I just gave everything away, and so I don't have anything to show. But thank you to Stop and Shop, everyone there. They were just amazing. It's an amazing neighborhood store. Last Wednesday evening, I had the honor of participating in Ridgewood's 36th Annual Interfaith Holocaust Remembrance Service. This very important and moving service was held at Temple Israel on Grove Street. Although the 2022 Week of Remembrance of Victims of the Holocaust has passed, I really urge everyone to remember victims of the Holocaust and other atrocities every day. Thank you to Rabbi Fine, our friend Rabbi Fine, Ridgewood's Interfaith Group, the Interfaith Choir, and all those who attended, especially family members and survivors. And I think I just had two more things. I did want to thank Wildscape, the students, the Rotary Club, everyone for your work. And I did want to tell our friend Mahmoud that I actually picked up my dry cleaning, a rather big load from the corner of Pleasant and Ridgewood Ave, Crown Cleaners. And it was such a large amount that it cut into, I thought I was doing myself a favor walking. It was such a large amount of dry cleaning, it cut my hand as I walked the 3 blocks to my house. So been there, done that, and I appreciate the comment. And with that, we will move on to, I believe, our PFAS presentation.
Correct. So we have Richard Calby, our Director of Ridgewood Water, and if you would introduce our guest, Mr. Calby.
Good evening. With me tonight, I have Earl Schneider. Mr. Schneider is the lead project manager for the designs of our PFAS projects for Ridgewood Water. We're here tonight to update the council, mayor, council, and audience, and people at home watching on the progress of our journey to rid the drinking groundwater of PFAS. We've done a lot over the past 2 years to talk about PFAS, what it is, what the health effects are, you know what's being done around the nation about it, how much it's going to cost. But we really haven't done an update of where we really are in terms of the projects and the progress that we're making. So we're hoping tonight to provide that information to you and answer any questions that you may have on that progress.
For those who may not be aware, could you just briefly indicate what PFAS is, how it occurs, and what, and then you'll go into what we're doing.
Sure. So PFAS is an acronym that stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. This is a class of thousands of compounds. The ones that we're primarily concerned with in the Ridgewood water system are PFOA and PFOS. There's a DER-regulated contaminant in the state of New Jersey, PFNA, but we have very little detection of this in our system. PFOA is the predominant one in our system. These are compounds that have been manufactured for decades. They are commercially and industrial available. They've been used by probably every household in the nation, probably every business in the nation, and unfortunately found their way into our groundwater over time, and now we're charged with the responsibility based on current regulations to remove that from our water. So with that, I'll give an overview of what we're going to touch on tonight. Mr.
Excuse me, Rich, I have one question on that.
Sure.
You and I have spoken about this. When you say it's found its way into our groundwater, you mean the nation's groundwater, correct? Not just Ridgewood's groundwater.
The compounds are very prevalent throughout the whole United States in groundwater, surface water. And New Jersey has some of the largest detections throughout the state, but it's found in California. It's been found as far as polar bears in the North Pole in their blood. So it's all over.
So this is really a worldwide project. This is not something that's peculiar to Ridgewood's water, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So we're going to start. Mr. Schneider is going to do a review of the overall PFAS treatment approach, kind of a refresher of when him and I were here last to go over the master plan, which, believe it or not, was over 2 years ago at this point, pre-COVID. Then he's going to give a status of the ongoing projects, design and construction. I'm going to dive into the current system operations and what we're doing to reduce PFAS while that treatment is being brought online. We're going to talk about some pilot testing that's been ongoing to make sure that we're going to be utilizing the best media for the money and paying attention to our corrosion issues to make sure any media that we utilize will not have a detriment on the corrosion efforts that we've taken in the system for lead and copper corrosion. Then we're going to talk a little about the money, updates on funding and where we are, how much we've spent, how much is left to be spent, what help we're getting, and there's some good news on that front, and then, of course, some questions and answers. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Schneider to begin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for having me. So just a review of where we are. The first bullet here says that the average water demands in Ridgewood are about 7 million gallons of water per day. In the summer, the system uses about 13 million gallons of water per day. So keep that in mind as I talk about the treatment plants and them coming online. And there will also be a summary slide that Rich will give at the end. But the idea is to start chipping away at, the 7 million gallons to at least get to the average, get that much treatment in place to get to the averages, and then we'll get to the 13 million gallons per day. And, I think we eventually will have 18 million gallons per day of treatment capacity. We are going to be installing a lot of treatment using a granular activated carbon, GAC. Back in the master plan, we determined that it had the best overall life cycle costs, and it was a proven industry standard. And you can see a picture of what a granulated activated carbon looks like in the top right corner. Resin is also used, an anion exchange resin, and we will be using that in a couple of locations where the sites just are not large enough to house the GAC treatment vessels, which are substantially larger. Back in the master plan, we had looked at two options to address the problem. One was there are 60 wells roughly in town right now, and they put water into the 4 municipalities at 31 locations. Since the PFAS is so prevalent, it's in every well. In order to put the treatment at 31 points of entry where the water gets into the distribution system now, we had come up with a cost of $104 million. Quite a big ticket. That did include contingency money, engineering money, legal and administrative costs, stuff like that. We also looked at an option 2, which was centralized treatment, which was to bring water from some of the wells to central locations and get to 13 points of entry. That's actually now 12 points of entry. We added one additional well, and we budgeted that at $89 million, and right now we think we're on track for $80 million. So it's still a huge investment for Ridgewood and the other municipalities. Next slide, Rich, it's very, not the greatest slide, but what it's trying to describe is through the various municipalities, there's blue dots, which are wells that are going to be brought to the green dots, and there's red lines in between. That's a lot of water main that's going to be bringing water from these satellite wells to these central locations, and that's going to get us to the 12 points of entry that I mentioned. In total, we'll have 18 million gallons of treatment capacity. We talked about GAC being preferred solution. 12.5 miles of new raw water main is going to be required to get the water to these centralized sites. Once we get the water there, it will actually reduce operations requirements because there won't be as much of a requirement for taking water samples at all 60 wells, 30 points of entry. It'll get reduced to 12. It'll make the operations staff life easier, making rounds and going to the critical locations. Next slide. So just an update on what we're doing. CAR is a treatment facility that's already online, and I think the cover photo showed that. So you already have 1 million gallons per day of treatment. Okay, remember the numbers we're trying to get to are 7 for the average and 13 for the peak month in the dead of summer. 20 is under construction right now, and that'll be another nominal 1 million gallons, so that'll get us to 2. and here's some of the news. We had an engineer's estimate on this job that's going to be about $877,000. We got a nice bid at $532,000, so we saved some money there. And we also, the pictures are a little bit small, but in the top left picture, you can see old vessels that were used at this well site previously for taste and odor that had been taken offline and not used, so they were a little beat up. We took those vessels, and in the top right picture you can see a crane that is taking those vessels away. And in the bottom left picture you can see them, they've been refurbished out at a paint shop out in Pennsylvania. And those will be back on site here within about a month. And we also were able to work with the DEP to, based on some testing we did, to run these at a little higher flow rate than the DEP would normally permit, because we proved in our testing that they could run at a little higher flow rate. So all of this in concert is we're trying to watch the dollars as best as possible, because it's such an expensive project. But this looks like it's going to be relatively successful for Ridgewood Water. That'll be on scheduled to be in service June, July. Carr Linwood. Now, Carr is the existing facility that I mentioned before. Those are the existing vessels, and this treats about 1 million gallons per day. We are going to be adding a Linwood well, which is down by, what's the Graydon Pool? Okay. Well, you can't really build down there because it's a very nice area, and I think it's green acres, and there's a lot of reasons. So we're actually bringing Linwood well up here, and we're going to add it to the treatment train. And as of right now, we're scheduled to put that into construction this August. And that has a cost of about $2 million to get the water main up here, tied in to the facility here. So that's ongoing. Ravine, we were here a few weeks ago with the planning board, and there's the rendering that we all discussed. But that also is scheduled to go into construction in August, $2.7 million. This will be almost another million gallons per day. So now we're getting up towards, I guess, 4 million gallons per day. So we're starting to really chip away at getting to 7, then we have to get to 13. We saved some money here. Ridgewood Water was able to secure a $2.7 million grant, and that we're hoping pays 100% of the construction. So not a lot of money out of pocket thus far. And in here we also saved a little bit of money because there had been a water main installed between the Ravine well and the Mar well, which is over on the edge of the town there. And there was going to be a VOC facility that was going to move the water between those two. The VOC facility was never built, but we're going to reuse that water main to bring Mar water over to Ravine. So there's some cost savings there. Next slide, Rich, please.
Can you explain what the VOC facility is?
Okay, so a VOC facility, and you have some of them, those are facilities that remove volatile organic chemicals, and you have some of that in your system. You have these volatiles, tetrachloroethylene, there's PC, TC, tetra-trichloroethylene, and that's a chemical that was regulated in the late 1980s, and at that time it was found in Ridgewood, and basically it's a treatment technology where you bring the water in and you aerate it. So these treatment facilities, a lot of them have imagine a big tall can full of wiffle balls, not very complicated treatment, and when you pour the water down through and you blow air up, it strips the chemical out of there. And you have several of those in the Ridgewood water system now. That's why you have, even though you have 60 wells, you have 30 points of entry, because back in the 80s, things were starting to be centralized. And now we're just doing the next step because PFAS is everywhere and really centralizing the system. I hope I answered your question. Moving from Ravine, There's 4 facilities that are the big 4. And these, when they are completed, will be another 11.5 million gallons per day. So that is going to put you up above the 13. Ames is in Wyckoff, and Cedar Hill is in Wyckoff, and you can see how much that is, 2.2 million gallons per day, 3.6 million gallons per day. Prospect is in Glen Rock. It's actually at the wastewater treatment facility location. Wardendyke is in Midland Park. That's 11.5 million gallons per day of total capacity. Phase 1, the treatment plants should be online by the spring of 2024. We're planning to go in construction January of 2023, so it's coming up pretty good. We're at 60% design. When those are completed, you'll get 40% of that 11.5. Then we have to run all the raw water mains to bring all the satellite wells in, and then you'll get the balance by the spring of 2025. So by 2025, your system is pretty much going to have clean water. Then there's a few more facilities that are going to just get you up to like 18 MGD. So it'll raise you up. Here's an idea of building in Wyckoff. To the right is a house that is on the same street, and we're in a residential neighborhood. To the left is a elevation drawing that our architects came up with, and we are going to try to make this facility look at, close to what is in the residential neighborhood. We're really going to try to make this blend in. Next slide. This is a site plan. It's on Hartung Drive. It just shows that the facility will be set back as much as we possibly can. We're trying to be cognizant of the neighbors, and we're addressing the sound issues as much as possible. And we'll be in front of the planning board in all these towns to discuss this. This is just the one for Ames. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just to give you an idea of what we're doing. Next slide. And this is, one of the reasons these are big, expensive buildings. In order to treat 1,500 gallons per minute here, which is a little over 2 million gallons per day, we need 6 of these vessels. These vessels are 12-foot diameter. They're about 15 feet tall. They take up a relatively large amount of space. We need pumps. We need chemicals. We need a rather substantial electrical room. So you can start seeing why these facilities are as large as they are. I hope you can hear me. Next slide, Rich. When we get done with the big 4, there will be some other facilities here. East Ridgewood, Maine, Eastside, Mountain, West End, that will be coming online between 2024 and 2026. That's a picture of West End. That's in a very residential neighborhood. You can see the existing treatment facility is a VOC treatment facility, and you can see how that was designed to blend into the neighborhood. We're going to try to when we put our building there, we're actually going to have resin at this location because the site is so small. We're going to try to make sure we blend in also. And with that, what's next? And this is going to be hard to read, but Rich can explain what's going on.
So just to clarify, I think Mr. Schneider's been at 2 other utilities today, so he gave us their wells too. There's 52 wells in the Ridgewood water system, not 60. But just to kind of put that in perspective, as you mentioned, today we operate those 52 wells, and a majority of them already combine to what we call points of entry or treatment plants. That is the result of the volatile organic compound contamination that Mr. Schneider mentioned. So what we're doing today with PFAS is no different than what the utility dealt with in the 80s to rid the water of VOCs. Centralized the system to provide treatment where there was available space and the ability to provide that treatment. So this slide here may be very hard for everybody to see. We will provide an updated version of this on our website, But this was an attempt we had made after the master plan was published some 2 years ago to kind of chart the progress of the build-out of the PFAS treatment over time and show the capacity that would be brought online with each new plant against the dollars that it would cost. So as you follow the line across, the two important things to realize, as Mr. Schneider mentioned, the average daily demand in a given year is about 7 million gallons a day. The peak monthly average daily demand is 13 million gallons a day. But we all know that the peak day in the summer could go as high as 17. So that's not shown on this chart, but imagine that line going across as well. You know, but if you follow the diagonal line across, it gives you an idea as each plant is built out where we kind of fall within the range. Currently, with the Carr plant online, we have 1 million gallons a day of PFAS-free water. Passaic Valley Water Commission Interconnect is hopefully going live this summer. That is going to be a capacity of 1 million gallons a day, upwards of 3 million gallons a day on the days that they can provide us that extra capacity. So that instantly climbs us up to 4 million gallons a day. With the addition of the Twinney plant that's scheduled to be completed, we'll be at 5. We're nearing the 7 very quickly. Once Ravine, Marr, and Carr-Linwood, the improvement at Carr is completed, sometime at the fall, end of 23 to be conservative, we're going to be past the average daily demand of 7 million gallons a day. And then we just continue to climb. The big 4, and they're titled that way for a reason because they are the 4 biggest plants out of the 12. They've taken the longest to design. The picture that was shown on Ames was shown for a reason, and it's actually not the biggest of the 4. Cedar Hill actually dwarfs it with another 2 to 4 vessels. It's a tremendous building. But all 4 of those are being bid at the same time. They're going out to bid in January of 2023. A very short time from now, they're already under final design. And then once those are online, you know, fast forward to the end of 24 with the addition of the mountain treatment plant, we're going to be well in excess of that peak average monthly day. And then with everything else that was shown on the previous slide, plugging in East Side, West End, East Ridgewood, and Maine, we then are going way beyond that 17 million gallon per day peak day. So this representation helps to kind of put that in perspective. I know it's very hard to see, but we'll publish a copy. So what are we doing now in the interim, you know, that we have these wells on and there's PFAS in them? The unfortunate part for Ridgewood Water is we cannot shut every well off. There's no other place to get the water from. We have to provide fire protection and maintain pressure in the system. So very early on, we came up with an approach that operationally we would favor the wells that have the least amount of PFAS in the system and only turn on the wells that have higher volumes or concentrations of PFAS only when needed. So just to give an example, the chart at the right is not a current representation, but the combined PFAS concentrations are PFOA, PFOS, and PFNA if it was detected at any of the wells. We used those combined numbers to create this strategy and looked at it per pressure zone where the wells are located. So the operators or our system, when they're turning wells on, they go by this ranking and favor those that have the least concentration first. In a normal kind of winter off-peak month, there is the least amount of PFAS concentration in the system because we're utilizing the wells that have the least amount and using as much as possible out of the Carr treatment facility. Once Passaic Valley is on, we'll be maximizing that as much as we need to, getting as much of that 3 million gallons a day that we can into the system as well. We have an additional interconnect with Hawthorne. Their groundwater system also affected by PFAS. We will not be using that supply until they have treated it. As you kind of move along the line, and we've actually calculated per year, there's a good majority of the year that this is very successful, but we all know what happens in the summer when demand skyrockets due to the outdoor water usage. So it's prudent upon all of us to pay very close attention to conservation, particularly through these next 2 to 3 years as we start to build out this treatment and try to give our operators the ability to maintain this ranking as best as possible. So some of the other things we're doing to ensure that the dollars are spent properly, we've been doing pilot testing. And what is meant by that, we are literally mimicking a small-scale design of a treatment plant. We've looked at various resins for ion exchange. We've looked at various granulated activated carbons. We are currently doing a joint venture project with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and Calgon. They're a manufacturer of carbon and resin. That's been ongoing now for about half a year. The purpose of that corrosion test rig that you could actually see in the right photo, those are columns of actual media. We're actually putting our water through it to determine if which one is better, GAC versus resin. And, can we use both in a combination in the future? Now, we've taken that even further beyond looking at just what the media effect is on PFAS removal. On the left, you see an additional photograph of other equipment. We are taking the water out of those columns and then running it through lead plates to mimic corrosion of lead to make sure that GAC or resin is not going to have a detrimental effect on the corrosion of lead in our system. We have found through this experiment that GAC is the better of the two in certain areas of our system. So we are sticking with that, but in the areas where we are putting resin, we have these packed towers for the volatile organic compounds, and we found through this testing that with the packed towers, the resin does perform just as well as the GAC. So this was good information for us. It was good timing because we're at the point where none of this is installed. So we have great information to utilize for operators and for the designers to make sure what we're designing is the best for this system. Funding. Everybody always wants to know how much it's going to cost, where this money's coming from. Since Ridgewood Water is a government-owned public utility, all the money that's collected from the ratepayers is funded through the utility. This is not a private company where there are shareholders and profit sharing. So in order to pay for the $800 million improvement that we're facing with this PFAS, we started to collect a PFAS surcharge. That started July of last year. It was $3.30 for the smallest size meter, upwards of $82.50 a quarter for the largest meter. The good majority of our customers are in the 5/8 meter category, and we're paying $3.30 per quarter. For 21, we collected upwards of about $158,000 from that charge. That money is being reserved for the PFAS debt. In 22, this July, that rate for the 5/8 meter will go up to $7.06. The highest meter size, the 3-inch, will go up to $176.50 per quarter. We expect to collect $495,000 in 22 to supplement that PFAS, fund of money for the debt. What's going to help stabilize this amount and hopefully prevent it from continuing to double and climb, as Mr. Schneider mentioned, and we all know we're in receipt, very lucky to be in receipt of a grant as a result of our efforts and the support of Congressman Gottheimer and Senator Menendez, a $2.8 million grant to the Village of Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water. That's going right to the Ravine plant. And additionally, some very good news that Ms. Maylander and Mr. Rooney and I found out last Friday. We took the ride down to the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank down in Lawrenceville, New Jersey, investigated further what I-Bank loans are available through the State Drinking Water Revolving Fund, and found out that per year, and let me qualify this, per fiscal year, not calendar year, Ridgewood Water is eligible up to $25 million in loans from the state. Of that $25 million, up to $1 million is free loan forgiveness, almost like another grant. 50% of the balance of the remaining loan is 0% interest. It's a DEP loan. So the overall blended rate out of the iBank is much less than what we would pay with our AAA rating. And the other good news out of it, which was qualified by the gentleman that runs the iBank, ratings are never guaranteed. The village has a very strong rating. We hope it stays that way forever, but there's no guarantee that in 10 years from now it will be. The iBank will always have that strong rating. So in addition to these savings, we're guaranteed to stay at those savings if we were to go with the iBank. So we're now exploring that further and kind of reworking the schedule such that we could take the best advantage of that $25 million cap and the $1 million forgiveness per fiscal year. I think our projects are pretty much lined up in accordance with their calendar anyway, but we're just going to check and make sure. So we'll probably be coming to you shortly for a proposal and resolutions to approve that, moving forward, starting with the big four, which together total over $25 million. So that'll be a great start. So with that, I'd like to definitely open it up to further questions that you have, any discussion you have for myself and Mr. Schneider on what we presented, or anything to do with PFAS or the water system.
Okay, so before we go, does anybody have a problem if we open this up just for like 5 minutes to the public if they have questions? Are we okay with that? I know we don't typically do that, but is everybody okay? So are you okay with that? All right, good. So we're just going to take 5 minutes. If anyone from the public in the audience has a question, you can come up and ask. Any questions? You must have done a really good job. No questions. Okay, good. All right. Let's ask council members if they have questions. Go ahead. I'm busy writing right now.
As you're bringing these treatment facilities online, does there come a point when, for most of the non-summer months, we cross over to coming below the maximum contaminant level?
Yes, there is.
And when do you think that? I'm not going to hold you to it, but when do you anticipate that would happen?
Once Passaic Valley is online, we're pretty close because that's 4 million gallons a day. Definitely once Ravine and Carlinwood are done, so I would say end of 23. We're there and above.
Great.
Anything else? You good? Okay.
Thank you, Rich. It was a really great update. With the PFAS surcharge, how long might ratepayers anticipate having to pay the surcharge?
A great question. I don't have the direct answer to it. I could tell you the loans we're looking at taking are 30 years useful life, but not knowing what the debt schedules are going to be. And we're definitely going to offset them with these grants and the loan forgiveness. So there could be opportunities for that to end sooner than the 30 years. And of course, there's pending litigation and other opportunities that we're going after that hopefully will be successful and offset that as well. So it could end a lot earlier, but I don't have a true answer at this point, but maximum 30 years.
Okay, now that's what I figured too, and I had in mind the ongoing lawsuits that are unresolved yet because they're still ongoing, but thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilwoman Reynolds?
Hi. I just want to say thank you. It was a great presentation, very clear, concise. I hope that a lot of people are watching this because I think it hopefully will put their minds at ease at what we're doing and how quickly it's happening. I think we're way ahead of the curve compared to other towns. So thank you.
Okay. Councilman Vagianos.
Yeah, Rich and Earl, really great presentation. I have some questions, and I just want to cover some of the high points. You said this is going to cost us $80 to $100 million, but for most ratepayers, you said it's going to be $3.30 a quarter. So for most ratepayers, it's going to cost them about $13 a year. Is that correct?
That was the cost based on last year's increase. This year, it's going up to $7.06, or about $29 for the year.
Okay, what do you project once we have built out all the PFAS treatment facilities it's going to cost?
Prior to knowing about the iBank opportunity, we were projecting upwards of over $50 a quarter.
$50 a quarter?
Yes.
So it's ultimately going to cost all the ratepayers about $200 a year.
Correct.
Yeah. And this is spread out over not just Ridgewood residents, but all the ratepayers in, what is it, we have 5 towns that we service?
Four towns.
4 towns.
Every ratepayer pays the same rate. It's uniform rates, whether they're fixed or volume-driven.
Got it. And I was looking at that chart. It took me a moment to figure it out, but I think I got it, which is in about October of 23, we should get to about 7 million gallons per day of treatment, which, as you said, I believe is the average gallons per day that we use in non-summer months, correct?
It's the average daily demand
In non-summer
across the whole
months.
year. It's really beginning of 24.
Beginning of 24.
Cross and across, but the chart probably could have been better. It should really be like a flat landing, like straight up like the building.
Got it. Just looking for a rough estimate.
Yes.
And we will be, as I see this, completely done and able to treat all of our water sometime in 2026. Is that correct?
That's correct, but those last few projects are very small.
Got it.
So, in reality, end of 24, beginning of 25 is where we're really done. Everything we're adding after that is a bonus.
Got it. So by beginning of 2025 or so, we should be able to treat all of our water for PFAS, even in the peak summer months, generally speaking.
Average peak,
Average peak.
not the peak day is 17 million gallons a day.
Got it.
But that's why we have storage tanks.
And in terms of Ridgewood Water, the utility, where do we stand versus other utilities in the state and in the country? Lorraine said, and I believe it's true, that we are ahead of the curve. Where do we stand in terms of getting all our water treatment for PFAS relative to others?
So if you put it on the national level, we're way ahead. New Jersey has the most stringent regulation in the nation, probably besides California, maybe New York. So we're way ahead of, there's some states that are still following the U.S. EPA values that are at 70 parts per trillion, much higher. So we are way ahead on the national perspective. Locally in the state, we're also ahead, but there's all these smaller utilities that now have to comply, and they only have 1 or 2 wells, so they're going to be fully compliant before us. So by nature, because of our size and complexity, other people are passing us, but when you can put us in comparison based on our size, we're still ahead.
So, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, but would you say nationally we're in the top 50%, the top 20%?
I would say we're at the top, say 20%, because there's not, again, there's not very many states that have regulated at this level.
That's great. And again, I know what you said earlier that, and I just want to stress this because I know that there's a lot of concern that this is something that is a Ridgewood water problem. It is absolutely not a Ridgewood water problem. It is a national water problem.
National problem, if you wanted to look further, there's an organization, Environmental Working Group, that's done a study nationwide. You could look at the dots on the map of every state. You'll find that New Jersey has a lot of dots. Just in this area, pretty much every utility that's around us has the same issue, and at the same levels. It's pretty persistent, pervasive, and there's a reason they call it emerging contaminant or forever chemical. It doesn't go away unless you strip it out of the water.
Got it. And lastly, this was such a great presentation. Will this be posted online on the village website so that people can go to it if they're looking for more information?
We'll post it on the Ridgewood Water website.
That's great. Thank you so much. This really helps everybody, I think.
Thank you.
So I just have, did you have another question?
I just kind of had a follow-up to Paul's, where you said, you know, in the future, it would be like a $50 surcharge a quarter. But now with the iBank, where we can get $1 million grant every year, and then I believe $12 million would be at 0% interest, I have to assume that number would come down. Have you calculated that number yet?
No, we have not.
Okay, but the number will come down.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Will you give us an update on that number whenever it is that you have a handle on it?
Yes, we will.
Thanks so much.
So now I have a few questions. Thank you. First, thank you. Amazing presentation. And so I have a couple of questions. First, in our policy meeting, Rich, we had discussed the iBank and the DEP loan. Were those connected? Did you have to use both? Did we ever ask that question? Because it seemed to me that they were, one was contingent on the other. So is that accurate?
I believe the answer is you have to use them both
You
together.
have to go to both. Okay.
Yes.
That was an important financial question. I wanted to go back to the interim PFAS management page on the operational strategies, the average versus peak water demands. So on that page, and I just want to make sure I understand it. I do understand it, but I just want to reiterate it for everyone. So what I am to understand, there is a demand, and so we are using the least affected wells in order to meet that low demand, and as the demand increases, we're going into the more impacted wells, so that then increases the rate, the contaminant rate. And that, as I'm understanding, is occurring during those peak times in the summer. So I would think it imperative that we do outreach to our municipalities that we serve and encourage the conservation of water, because the one thing we know in Ridgewood, and it's one of the complaints that we've had for many years, is that Ridgewood residents must comply with water restrictions, but in the other three municipalities, even though we've met and we've urged, and I think some have attempted to implement ordinances with restrictions, they've largely been unsuccessful, as some have been, others not so much. But if those restrictions actually lessen the exposure, then I think it's imperative that we go to those other municipalities and really, I don't know, I think that we have discussed this legally, what we can do, and if we can get everyone on board, you know, that would be really, really helpful, because that's no longer now is it a watering your lawn and water conservation. Now it's actually a public health issue. So I think it's a good idea to go back and revisit that. I think we probably should get on it like tomorrow.
Yes.
In case you had nothing to do.
Yesterday. And so that's really my question. That was my biggest concern. I just wanted to say that from the gate, when this popped up on the radar, I have to say I believe that we were very aggressive in our approach, and I commend Ridgewood Water and staff and, you know, the village council that sat here and said, we're going to get this done. So I think that, you know, we're on our way, and I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
And if I can, Mayor, just to add to that, Rich is a very humble guy and never really talks about how much in the forefront Ridgewood Water was with regard to this.
Yes.
Before the standards were set in New Jersey, we were way ahead of this. And in 2018 was when we began, maybe beginning of end of 17, but we began the search for taking on the manufacturers of the PFAS chemicals. It was in the beginning of 19, January of 19, the federal suit had started when Ridgewood Water sued 3M, DuPont, Chemours, Honeywell, Tyco, ChemGuard, Buckeye, National Foam, a number of other different defendants. So back in 18, 19, way before this happened, we had already undertaken the litigation to get this going and get it moving. 2019. The other aspect of it, there was another avenue of approach that Rich also championed, which was to, since we know through the lawsuit that many of these chemicals got into our systems back as early as the late 60s, there may be coverage with insurance policies, general liability insurance policies that Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water had back in effect at that time that could provide relief, financial relief with regard to some of these claims because that happened back then. So we've also undertaken the effort to deal with potential litigation concerning all those prior insurance carriers that provided coverage for this type of a loss back through those years. So just about every avenue that we could think of, Rich has certainly gone after and endeavored to try and relieve the financial pressure that this puts on the water ratepayers throughout the system. And so not only is the iBank calculation not done yet, but they haven't done the calculations from whatever relief might be recovered from the federal lawsuit as well as the prior insurers.
So I'm going to concur, and I will say when I said aggressive, we took an aggressive stance. I'm never sure what we're allowed to say legally, so because we know all these things, but thanks, Matt, for that explanation. And yes, I think that aggressive may have been an understatement.
Yeah, more for, not necessarily for the council, because I know the council is aware of it, but more for the public in terms of those who might be listening in on this.
Yeah. So, why don't you just come on up and we'll take that question. We'll give everybody, come on up, Mahmoud. We'll just take 3 minutes for questions if anyone has a question. Come on up, microphone. Name and address for the record.
It's a quick question. I think it's a very job very well done. I think, you ran into this big situation. You gave us a lot of information, but can I ask for 3 sheets per chart showing when we're going to have what done? I saw many dates, and for me to be able to say, okay, I cannot really capture them, but if they are in one chart, then we can figure out. The other thing I'm asking for is milestones, so that each quarter you can say, this is how much money it was spent, this is what we accomplished, so now we can see the project is converging rather than diverging. And third thing is the earned value. You showed us a lot of sources of getting funds. So it's nice to know, what are the funds, how much we're getting, when we're getting them, and how it's going to go through the project. So that would be very easy for us every time, there's a presentation, we take a look at it and say, oh, we are progressing in the right way, or, there's something going on so that we don't have an overrun at the end. We can see it from the beginning. Just a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you. I think those are probably doable, right? Okay.
I think that's actually in the presentation.
Yeah, I think so too.
On this sheet. You can't see it from there, but this will be posted on the website. So this is exactly what you're asking for.
Right.
I believe is right on this sheet. In fact, I'm happy to give you a copy of mine at the end of the meeting.
I don't think is the money on there? Not the finance. He asked for financials too, so I think that's...
No, but
yeah.
it's got the amount of money that's being spent on a timeline.
Okay. Come on up, Lillian.
Lillian Blood, 250 North Maple. I think that one of the things you pointed out was the health reasons for less use of water. It's something that should be promoted, because people think you're just saving water because you don't want your lawns to be green. But if you think you want your health to be better by saving water, so somehow maybe people who are savvy in how to word that could get that message out to the people. And thank you for the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Lillian. Did you request? Come on. No? Okay. All right. Everybody's good? Thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank
we'll
you.
get that presentation up on the website as soon as possible, and if it pops up soon, I'll just shoot you an email and let you know it's there.
Okay, so our first item to discuss is under parking, grab-and-go parking spaces. We have extended the grab-and-go complimentary parking spaces until May 31st. The information requested was the location of the current grab-and-go parking spaces, the current sponsors of the grab-and-go parking spaces, and the current location of the 15-minute meters. So it's given to you both in words as well as on a map, and so at this point, we'll discuss this matter.
And I'm going to continue to recuse myself from this matter.
Okay.
Okay. So I. Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Okay. We did discuss this at length at the Central Business District Advisory Committee, and we've written a recommendation to the council, and I would like to read the 5 points that we had. Grab and Go benefits several types of businesses. It supports services that depend on customer drop-off and pickup, such as the UPS store, Leonard Anthony Dry Cleaners, and Quality Shoe Repair. It also is convenient for customers of retailers like Pizzazz and Beers Florist. Of course, many restaurants rely on Grab and Go for their takeout orders as well. Next point, as customer preferences and buying habits shift over time, the ability to get in and out of the CBD quickly at no cost creates an incentive for visitors to buy downtown. In addition, the lingering effects of COVID-19 still prompt many customers to avoid spending time inside business establishments. The availability of contactless purchase therefore remains a draw. Third point, when shoppers can run errands quickly, that translates to higher street parking turnover, which in turn means more business for the merchants. Fourth point, the village must fill parking spaces in the Hudson Street garage to help pay off its construction debt. Grab and Go does exactly that by encouraging visitors who want more than 15-minute parking to skip street parking in favor of the garage. In this way, Grab and Go spurs a change in consumer behavior and indirectly fosters a culture of walking, window shopping, and retail therapy, all of which support commerce. Last point, Grab and Go provides guaranteed revenue to the village by paying for parking spots as if they are fully occupied Monday through Saturday. Under normal circumstances, however, these spots might actually stand vacant for hours, depending on weather or time of year. So that's the CBDAC's recommendation. We also had several emails from residents, and they were all in favor of it. I support continuing the program.
Sure.
In terms of location, I guess other council members may have comments, and I'd like to hear them.
Yeah, I just first had a question. In terms of those CBDAC recommendations, what studies and research did the CBDAC do? What did the CBDAC, what was their engagement? What other than opinions, because they're made as statements, other than what is the foundation for those statements? Where's the research? Where's the data? Where's the back and forth to the other business owners? What is the basis for those statements?
That's very difficult because a lot of the businesses don't know where their customers are parking, and so we were basing it on observations by our guild liaison, our chamber, and restaurant owners who come to our meetings, and residents who are members of the CBDAC. Unfortunately, it looks like our parking utility doesn't track parking spots individually. So that, again, makes data hard to track or hard to come up with.
So those are just anecdotal observations. It's not anything, there's just no basis really other than somebody said this or that. So I just want to make sure that I understand, because those are very significant statements without any basis, and
Well,
that's concerning.
It is guaranteed income to the village.
That was the one that was, actually. That was
Right.
the one that was.
Right, we
a
know that.
statement. Okay. That, actually, I meant to say, sans that last point. Sans that last point. Did you have something?
Sure. I like 15-minute parking spots. I wish there were more of them. I wish they were spread out a little more. I personally don't like the grab and go because I don't think there's really any way to monitor it. And I've heard people parking there, they pay with Park Mobile, they get a ticket, they didn't know it was a 15-minute. I don't know. Is there any way, like Heather, do we have any additional meters that we could put in place of grab and goes?
We may still have some of the meters. We don't have all of them. I know we sold a lot of them.
Because I would love to see more 15-minute meters.
I would have to
or
find out.
To replace some of the grab and go. And I do think the 15 minutes, they seem to all be clumped together. Like Mahmood said, if there could be one in front of Walgreens, like you don't want to have any of the 15-minute meters where there's parallel parking. But like at the first spot to pull in after you pass Cottage on East Ridgewood, right in front of Walgreens, that would be a great spot. Or at some of the other ends of the blocks. Like the only one that is not very close to East Ridgewood is there's one down on Broad Street.
Right.
And I think that's the only one by looking at it. Could we have one at the end of Chestnut?
Right. When we instituted the 15-minute meters, it was really to put them on the side streets so that East Ridgewood Avenue would be parking completely. And then the side streets, it's usually the first few spots, usually turning right as you're going up towards Broad. But there are some also on your left, such as Prospect, and also South Broad.
I realize that. I just think they're so clustered that it's almost an advantage to some places and a disadvantage to others. That, somebody can't just pop in a quarter in the meter and run in and get something. If they have to walk down a whole block to even get to the area where they want to go, that 15-minute meter doesn't make sense for them.
Right. Or the 15-minute free space even.
Right.
However it's 15-minute configured.
I love the idea of 15-minute spaces because to me, if you are just going to stop and get something real quick, run into the post office, run into the dry cleaners, the shoe repair, it takes 5 minutes to use the kiosk. It doesn't make sense if you're only going to be like 8 or 10 minutes wherever you're going. So I would love to see 15 minutes more spread out. But that's me.
Oh, yeah. I've been in favor of this. I think there's a good mix of sponsored spaces and 15-minute spaces. I mean, there maybe could be one 15-minute space each on the tree streets along the Franklin Avenue side. But I think if we have willing sponsors who want to continue to program, I mean, I'm envious of people who have all the time in the world to just kind of meander downtown and take their time. But somebody like me, I don't have 5 minutes, really more than 5 minutes to do anything. So in order for somebody like me to use the downtown, this is incredibly useful and helpful. So I would support these, continuing this.
So I'm going to share my observations for what they're worth. So back in 2000, maybe it was 2014, maybe 2015, we worked to extend the parking spaces from a very short 2-hour to 3-hour because we really wanted people to come downtown and stay downtown and eat and walk and shop and experience. And in fact, at that time, I thought the meter should have been 4 hours, not even 3 hours, but that was the happy medium we came to, and we went to 3 hours. And now what we've done is we've taken a whole bunch of spaces and made them complimentary grab and go. And it kind of flies in the face of shop and stay. And in fact, I spoke to a number of businesses that were nearby to the grab and go spaces just to kind of get an understanding of what their thoughts were about the grab and go. And the response from one of them was kind of telling, as long as they're going and grabbing here, it's fine, but if they're going and grabbing elsewhere, it really impacts them, so it actually hurts their business. I also heard from a landlord today who said, get rid of this, just stop doing this because it actually is hurting other businesses and it's catering to some businesses and not others, which I think Councilman Reynolds. Now, last week I had the opportunity, it was really a fun day, it was the reason I didn't go to the iBank. I did a ride-along with our PEOs. And I will tell you that, and I have photo after photo because I take them myself, how many times across the grab-and-go parking spaces a truck on the that's diagonal, right? On those spaces, trucks pull in and take up all 4 spaces to deliver, which means during the time that those trucks are there making deliveries, nobody can grab and go, but it's become a loading zone and an unloading zone. The other thing I learned from my ride along with the PEO was that the complimentary 15-minute parking spaces, oftentimes they find that people pay the kiosk because there is a belief that the first 15 minutes is complimentary and they pay the kiosk. And my understanding from the PEOs that the PEOs were instructed to ticket vehicles that are parked there longer than the 15 minutes by the sponsors of those spaces because they own them. And so those folks should be ticketed. So in one instance, driving around with the PEO, there were multiple instances where vehicles were parked there for longer than 15 minutes, even though they paid the kiosk because the kiosk is right there, and even though technically by code those spaces are 3-hour parking spaces, tickets were issued. And I felt really, really, really bad. I was actually sad. I still am, I feel terrible about that. Because for anyone who's funding a complimentary 15-minute parking space, to believe that they own that parking space and that just a rule-following person paid into the kiosk for thinking that the first 15 minutes is free or complimentary, but it's still, you know, the kiosk is right there, that they should be issued a ticket is very, very concerning and unfortunate and actually sad. So I feel like we kind of need to maybe do some level of grab and go. But I do think that I think that it should not be as widespread as this. I don't think that that trucks should be able to park across 4 parking spaces and make deliveries. I don't think people who pay in the kiosk to park for 3 hours just because they, you know, saw a sign that said complimentary 15-minute parking. I think it's inconsistent with our regular trends of parking. I think it's confusing, and I think for folks who come downtown to visit to get a ticket from what is complimentary is awful. So my experience and observation, and in talking to shop owners and some landlords, I think that this needs to be really, really redone, rethought about, and a little bit kinder when we talk about complimentary. So that's my observation.
Well, Susan, none of those landlords or business owners that you talk to have come here to complain.
Yeah.
We haven't heard from them.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. When one of them dared to speak out about dining corrals, they received threatening messages, and one that was so upsetting, I actually had to instruct them to contact the police department and file a report. So I have landlords and businesses, I don't think they have to come here and make a public comment. I don't even want to tell, I couldn't even share what was said to a business owner on the phone on a message that was left for the business owner. It is so unconscionable and outrageous that to put people, ask them to come here after a long day of work, all they want to do is business. They don't have to come here. They have to trust that we are going to represent all businesses equally, that we are going to put them, make them whole, give them what the exact place that they leased in the way that it was leased, the street that it was leased in, an open public parking, open road, Main Street, USA. So I don't think people have to come here and then be in the crosshairs of crazy of social media frenzy and attacks and bullying. They're trying to conduct business. They don't want to be seen as somebody, the naysayers, or somebody that all they're doing is trying to protect their business. So I actually have to say I appreciate that they trust me to speak to me.
Our residents have to come here and express their opinions.
Sure.
And they're the ones who want the grab and go. We have had no residents say, get rid of grab and go. This is what the residents want. And maybe what we could, and I don't know who's telling the PEOs that the sponsors own the spots. This was told to the sponsors that they could sponsor a spot, but they don't own it. It is open to everyone who wants to park there. Nobody owns any of these grab-and-go spots. That's the beauty of it, and that's why it is for the whole community. And if it's a problem in terms of ticketing, that's because people are misunderstanding or it's not being enforced properly. And speaking of enforcement, those trucks should not be allowed to be using them as a loading zone. And so the PEOs should be looking at that for ticketing.
The trucks couldn't use them if there weren't 4 in a row, and I have photo after photo after photo after photo. As a matter of fact, I have shared the story where I pulled into one of the grab-and-go parking spaces to run a purse that was broken. The strap was broken. I brought it over to shoe repair to get it fixed. And when I came out, my car was blocked by a truck. Now, the reason my car was blocked by the truck was the only car that was in the grab-and-go space. So, countless times the trucks pull into all 4, block all 4 for lengthy periods of time. This needs to be, I appreciate what the residents say, but nobody appreciates them more than me. But I will tell you that we're talking about a central business district, and we're talking about treating everyone equally in terms of their business opportunities and their ability to conduct business. So again, we have a statement that, I kind of draw that analogy again when we talk about the pedestrian plaza. If I came to Kenilworth and blocked off both ends of Kenilworth and said you can't access your driveway and your sidewalks, you're no longer on a street, you're on a footpath, everybody would be screaming. But it's okay. These are property owners. They are in a central business district, so we have to treat this, we have to look at this and say, we did this, and it works to a certain extent. It works. But it really needs to be fixed because there are real problems with it. And I am telling you, I was very upset to learn that somebody said, we own those parking spaces, ticket anyone who's there for more than 15 minutes. And that's exactly what has happened. And people have come to court with those tickets. And it is so really not the spirit that this was intended as. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have learned and to know that that's what's happening. So I think, in my opinion, just my position, I tend to agree with Councilwoman Reynolds. I'd like to see, and I think that a resident said it earlier as well, that there maybe should be, and I think I even said this a couple of weeks ago, I think that these spaces should be spread out so that there's opportunity for other businesses, not clustered where there's 4, 5, 6 in a spot. There should be maybe one at each end of the block, period, end. And if people don't want to sponsor that because it's not convenient for their businesses or... Hold one moment, please, while we address our technical difficulties.
Redirecting.
Well, oh, run out the room with it. Can somebody help him shut that off? Oh, you want to go in the other room with it? No, I don't. Oh, did you shut it off? All right. Pardon this interruption.
Well,
so I think that I agree that there shouldn't be these clusters, and I hear businesses saying that, you know, we can't live without them, but they lived for like 60 years without them. These were kind of COVID protocols that we put in place. I think we should rethink it, spread it out, and maybe one, if they're 15-minute meters, or whether somebody wants to sponsor them, I'm okay with that. But I think that they need to be spread out, not clustered like this. Because when you think about those 4 spaces right outside of one business that's not benefiting, that's right into their doorway. They're not benefiting at all because everybody's running across the street grabbing food. And I also understood from parking is that and I don't really understand this, I'm going to say it, that the double parking is exacerbated by grab and go because there's this idea that everybody should just park, and there's people running out in the street and handing food out of restaurants, and it's crazy. I think we have to start to tell people, park your car, get out of your car, and do your business. So,
the idea of clustering was a safety measure that the police department wanted to put in. It was the chief's idea that it is safer for people to know that if they make a right turn and then a right turn and then a right turn off Ridgewood Avenue, that the drivers would know where they're going instead of you know, looking in various different directions and being distracted.
You can make a right turn and a right turn and a right turn from Franklin to Chestnut to Ridgewood. You could do the same right turn. The right turn, that movement is not restricted to Ridgewood Avenue heading west. I mean, it's, as a matter of fact, I believe, and Heather can correct me if I'm wrong, the police department didn't want to put the one over by Lucky Brand, and I said, put it over there because you can make, I think that was that right turn argument didn't fly, and I said, you can make a right turn and a right turn and a right turn from the other direction. The right turn only happens from the direction you're coming in.
Okay, well, let's see what the police say, because I think that might be our solution. If you took some of the spots from the East Ridgewood Avenue end of the side streets and put them down closer to Franklin, maybe that solves the problem.
So I would have to see this because I'm at the point where, while I think some of it works, I don't think all of it works, and I think that because we're extending this to May 31st, you know, we have to get this done now, because otherwise we have to just scrap it, I think, and be done, and just get the 15-minute meter heads back.
Well, I think we need to find out how many 15-minute meters we have.
True.
Well, I would say that, you know, there's smaller issues that could be worked or reworked with something like this, but the loading zone issue I wouldn't attribute to grab and go, because we've had that, you know, for years before COVID. There was a whole issue with loading zones and, you know, people blocking up spaces and driveways and everything else. So that's more of a legacy issue that we've had to deal with before COVID, before grab and go and all this other stuff. So I think if they were complementary, if they were 15 minutes, if they were 2, 3, 4 hour spaces, I don't think it would matter, because where do trucks park? You know, we have a lot of businesses downtown, and they have to unload a lot of stuff to these businesses. So where do they park? If we don't have dedicated loading zones, they're going to park in whatever spaces they could find. So I think that's just another issue we'd have to deal with.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. It's those grab and go spaces where the trucks keep parking. It's an interesting observation. It's just interesting. So I don't know, you know, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they're being instructed to do that. I would have no clue. And I do agree with you, and we have addressed some of that to some extent. But again, if that's the case, then those 15-minute parking spaces that are complimentary are out of commission for those hours. So people are finding other places to park, because they can still put a quarter in the kiosk. I mean, it doesn't prevent anyone, but I do think I appreciate Catherine's point that, I think it was your point, that the 15-minute meters just make it a little bit user-friendly. So, but I think that if somebody wants to work on this, if two people want to work on it and kind of figure out where...
I do, for sure.
How we can, I think that maybe it's too many grab-and-go spaces, but they need to be spread out. So it's, I think to Mahmoud's point, and which I agree. I think that, we've clustered these in places, and look, if somebody says I'll just take for argument's sake, the tobacco shop sponsored the one by Walgreens, that's like a nice little advertisement for the tobacco shop because it's so many blocks away from Walgreens, so it could kind of work, right?
Can I ask, on the map, there is a spot, it shows a 15-minute meter on East Ridgewood Avenue between Cottage and Walnut. I don't think, is that correct? I do not recall a 15-minute meter being on that side of the street.
Hold on.
It would kind of be in front of
East Ridgewood Avenue next to UPS.
the sneaker place. I'm sorry,
There's
what?
one next to UPS on East Ridgewood Avenue.
No, the one by UPS would be much
Yeah, it's further up. I know where that is. I'm just saying on East Ridgewood specifically, that's where it says.
I'm just saying I think that's incorrect.
Yeah,
I
it probably is.
I don't think that mark should be there. Because I don't believe are there any
Oh, I know where that is.
15-minute meters on East Ridgewood
There's
besides
one
the UPS?
There's one right here. It looks like it's, you see, there is one right here, so maybe that 15.
Is it on Walnut?
It's on it's on South Walnut. It's right at the corner where World Flats is. I think it's the very first space in is the 15-minute on the east side of the east side of the block. It's the first space.
Next to Hillman's.
No. Go on to South Walnut, right? South Walnut. If you're on South Walnut and if you're heading toward the post office before you get to
Right.
Ridgewood Ave, it's the last space.
The last spot on
Is
the
the
right.
it's technically the first spot coming into South Walnut on the east side of the street, but it's the last spot, if you will. Either way, it's there. I know it is, actually.
Yeah, no,
You're
I
correct.
agree.
So it looks like the 15 is just in the wrong spot.
Yeah,
So I think,
right.
I think that what we all seem to be agreeing is that we appreciate that there are these 15-minute short-term spaces, but we have to rethink how this is planned out and figure out a better approach that it's just maybe more spread out and accommodates more businesses. And I think that may solve the issue twofold. I think it solves the issue of making that quick grab-and-go thing accessible, but it also makes it a little more fair, and I think it doesn't impact the stores that are right next to the clustered that need people to come in for longer periods of time, and all their nearest parking spaces are taken up as 15 minutes. So I think rethinking it resolves a lot of issues. Does that work?
Okay, so I have Councilwoman Perrin. Did another councilperson want to participate, or
I will.
You will, okay. And also involve Sergeant Chuck as well.
sorry?
Sergeant Chuck as well, and myself, and we'll figure it out.
And remember, right turns can be made from the direction you're coming in.
Yeah, I think we should have someone for Franklin. I agree with you. Okay. But realize that we will next discuss this on the 25th. That'll be our last chance to do a resolution. So I'll have to schedule a special public meeting so that we can do it unless we're willing to extend it, in which case we could extend it at next week's meeting to June 30th. So we have more time to discuss.
So why don't we just, they're going to be
We won't be able to
very-
discuss
they
it
will-
again until the 25th.
All right, we'll figure it out. Let's see what they come up with first, right?
But that's when you have to act on it.
Yeah.
Because it's
understand.
going to expire.
I'd like another month, at least, so that we can think about this.
I mean, because then at least you'll
Well, we
get
can
to
extend it
discuss
tonight
it.
anyway, so let's see how far along they get. is that we can always add it to that and extend it. You can't do that tonight anyway.
Right, but I'm saying that if it's discussed on the 25th, if you don't take action on it, it's not gonna, it's gonna die, right?
I understand. So if we get to that point where we haven't had it resolved, we can add to the 25th a special public meeting and just do a
Right,
resolution.
so I'll advertise that now, just in case, because it has to be done that many days before. Okay,
Understood.
okay, all right, good. Budget, award a change order. Valley Community Health, the nurses assisted the health department in doing clinics throughout 2021. This additional money was $9,532.27. The federal government grant covers the case investigation as well as contact tracing and planning, but it will not cover the actual clinics. And we are going to submit the charges to FEMA for possible reimbursement, but we don't know whether or not we'll get it. So basically, it's 193 hours at $49.39 per hour, which is what the nurses get paid. Again, the total is $9,532.27.
Okay, any questions? No?
Okay, the next item is awarding a contract under a state contract. This is for a Mason dump truck. It is to be awarded to Route 23 Auto Mall of Butler, New Jersey, not to exceed $88,627. The funding is in the 2022 capital budget. It will replace an old rusted-out vehicle, which is a 2006 Ford F-350 truck with 73,000 miles on it and a number of mechanical issues. And this new replacement Mason dump will have a snowplow on it as well.
Questions?
The next item is a Kenworth the award of the contract under the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey Cooperative Pricing System for the equipment for the new Mason dump truck. This is from Cliffside Body Corporation of Fairview, New Jersey, I believe it is. It's not to exceed $30,843. Funding is in the 2022 capital ordinance.
Okay.
So the truck itself
Right.
is going to cost us $88,000.
Correct.
And then the equipment for the truck on top of that
Is
is another 30.
Right, 30,800, right?
Right.
Correct. The next item is awarding a contract under the Sourcewell National Cooperative Contract to Kenworth of New Jersey LLC of Richfield Park, New Jersey, not to exceed $240,845.08. The funding in the 2022 capital budget. This is a triaxle dump truck with a Kenworth triaxle chassis and a Brandon dump body. These come together. It'll be used to haul materials such as soil, ground yard waste, snow, things like that. Any comments? The next one after that is going back to the drones. So there were, let me just, as we discussed the last time, the police department wishes to purchase a drone under state contract from Terrestrial Imaging of Brick, New Jersey. It includes the drone, 2 batteries, all necessary cables, 2 additional spare batteries, a launch pad, a strobe light kit, and a charging station, not to exceed $9,197.76. It also includes the setup of the drone. It's in the capital budget. There were some concerns expressed. I do want to go through it. One question was, will it stream the image as well as record? The answer is yes. It has the ability to stream the live feed back to the controller. The feed can also be streamed to other screens via an HDMI cord. It also allows for users to link into the live stream during an operation via a secure link created by Axon, which is the same company where we use for our body camera evidence storage. Can the drone be utilized at night? The answer is yes. It has thermal imaging camera as well as a regular HD color camera. The thermal imaging camera allows the drone to be operated at night and see heat signatures. It should be noted the thermal imaging camera and HD camera are separate, so they can be utilized at the same time from a single screen. Can the drone be traded in after 5 years? Yes. After the the life of the 5 to 7 year life expectancy of the drone, it can be traded in or sold as surplus, just as any other piece of equipment in the village. Who will be utilizing the drone? It will be operated by the properly licensed and trained members of the Ridgewood Police Department. It can be piloted by the licensed operator. It can also be piloted by licensed operators of the Ridgewood Police Department to assist other agencies or other departments. So if we gave it to the fire department, it would be the police who have been certified that would do it. In the policy for the drone operation, it requires a minimum of 1 pilot in command and a minimum of 1 visual observer to assist while the drone is being operated. What training will be required? Currently, Ridgewood Police Department has 3 FAA licensed drone pilots. These pilots have already been training with both other Bergen County agencies and Bergen County Police. Once the drones are purchased, it will allow them more opportunity to train with the equipment prior to utilizing it during real-time missions. What's the cost of the training? At this time, to become licensed, it costs $75 to take the test. The 3 current pilots have all studied and taken the FAA Part 107 test on their own time prior to requesting to join the drone unit. The company we are looking to purchase the drone through also offers training on top of the free training they give to the agency upon the purchase of the drone. How will the FAA regulation change on September 16, 2023 if we purchase the drones now? This new regulation will not render the drone purchase now obsolete. The regulation allows for multiple options to meet this requirement. Brendan Schulman of the company from which we're purchasing it said all drones that are flown outdoors, unless exempt, must perform remote ID by October 2023. Many of our most commonly used drones will be able to comply through a simple and free software update. If the technical standards, but the technical standards for remote ID have not yet been finalized and approved by the FAA, so they don't know exactly what they will be. Should the regulation not be satisfied with a simple software upgrade, it can be by adding a small module to the aircraft. The module cost will be minimal and can be revisited in 2023 when the technology is fresh. The bottom line is that there will certainly be either a software update or a hardware device that can be attached to a drone to make them remote ID compliant. So I think that's answered all those questions. I don't know if there are other questions or concerns you have, or if we can move forward with this.
That answers all my questions, and also what I understand from the FAA regulations. Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to go back to one thing. Did you say it takes 1 pilot and then 1 observer?
Correct.
So did both of those individuals have to be licensed?
It did not say so. Hold on.
So in other words, if
Let me just
you
see.
need, you have a one operating as FAA, is the observer then FAA also?
No, it says 1 pilot in command and a minimum of 1 visual observer to assist while the drone is being operated. It does not indicate it has to be a pilot.
And both of those people are police officers? Is the
Yeah,
observer-
that's the plan. That's the plan, because they own the drone. I mean, we're purchasing it for the police department.
No, I
It
understand.
could be used for others, but again, then those police department employees would then go and help the fire department.
So
Or-
and so the drone can be up maybe like an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, so that's like 6-hour man time for the drone operation on a big crowded event.
Right, and you'd have a lot of police officers at a big crowded event anyway, right? So,
Yeah, and I think the perspective that it would offer could probably be the equivalent to far more than just 2 police officers, because you figure it's all the way up in the sky. You can see the entire crowd, where officers on the ground can only see what's in their immediate vicinity. So,
Right.
thank you.
Okay, all right,
okay, we're okay?
all right.
Okay. The next one is rejecting bids for the Phase 2 restoration and rehabilitation of the Zabriskie Shedler House. Mr. Redeshauser prepared a bid proposal for the second phase of the rehabilitation and restoration work for Zabriskie Shedler. They were returnable on April 12th. There was a pre-bid conference. 4 interested parties appeared. Only 2 of them submitted bids. The 2 bids that were received on April 12th were from a company, one company was Deltec Inc., and the other was from H&S Construction Inc. The Deltec bid was the low bidder at $776,975, and H&S submitted the bid in the amount of $1,067,585. The budgeted amount is $800,000 for this work. Mr. Rudisill reviewed the 2 bids submitted. He sent them to Mr. Rogers because there were some deficiencies, and we have found out the deficiencies in the Deltec bid makes it not a legitimate bid. So therefore, H&S filed a letter with the village asserting the bid response from Deltec should be rejected. We're actually going to reject both bids due to the fact that the H&S bid response significantly exceeds the budget amount for the project. So we will rebid it. As you remember, these are pre-qualified bidders, and so the architect Connolly and Hickey architectural firm is going to get additional bidders to come in and bid who have already been pre-qualified, because there were several that were pre-qualified. So there should be at least some competition there, and we're looking forward to getting the bids in soon so that we can move forward with the final phase of this project.
Okay.
Okay?
So that was my question. This is for the completion of the house?
This is the end. This is the final phase of the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when do you think the rebid will get out?
I hope it'll get out within the next 10 days. And then we can, accept them and open them, and hopefully by, we're in May, hopefully by June we can award them.
Okay.
And then move forward from there.
And then is that we had received that $400,000 grant, right?
Yeah.
So how is that applied into this? Because that could be on money already spent or, right?
Right. It's money already spent is
Okay.
most of that grant.
Okay. All right.
Okay?
We did receive a letter from a resident, and I'll read what he says about Shedler. He said he would go further than rebidding and put the whole Shedler project on ice. 7 years and $7 million, and what do we have to show for Shedler? Very little. I would go back to the drawing board and start planning process afresh with a high-powered residents committee, fully representative of all the interests in the community. That would take an unbiased, critical look at every aspect of the project. I think he's talking about the house and the property, and he asked me to read his comments, and so that
I
I've done
was
that.
going to call point of order because I don't think that we're reading those letters and emails into the record. I mean, I think that, we get emails saying, yes, do this, and just as a reminder, the Zabriskie-Shedler house is on both the state and national registries. That occurred, the letter of a certificate of eligibility was issued, I believe, prior to even Mike and I being elected to village council. This came from the Historic Preservation Commission of the Village of Ridgewood, local historians, county historians. We were recognized for historic preservation by Bergen County on this project. We've gotten grants on this project. This process, and my understanding of when a municipality owns a historic structure, a designated on both the state and national registry, your obligation to that structure is different than just putting the project on ice. So I think that we need to get this moving forward and get it done, and respect the fact that it is both on the state and national registries, and respect the fact that our Ridgewood Historic Preservation Commission, local historians and county historians, the state of New Jersey, the federal government, and Bergen County all recognized that this was an important project. We've gotten grant funds from everywhere. So I think that can we just move on? So we,
I would like to say that you gave away a letter writer, so it really doesn't.
Yeah.
It really doesn't have any credibility as far as I'm concerned. And I was involved in the committee that came up with this, and Ramon Hache was a co-chair of this, and we had Parks and Rec involved. We had Wildscape members involved. We had people who lived in the neighborhood involved. We had sports people involved. There were surveys of sports groups. There was an incredible amount of work that was already done. That already happened, and it was the most painful committee I've ever been on in my entire career on this council. I wouldn't want to put myself through that. I don't think anyone else would want to put themselves through that either. This was already decided, and the State Historic Preservation Office is taking their time in approving the entire project. But that's kind of where we are right now. We're on the cusp of just about finishing. I mean, the house is basically done. We have one more phase to do, and that's it. And as soon as the State Historic Preservation Office gives us our recommendations and our approvals, the money's already there. The project could be easily completed. To start over again is just going to add years more to this project unnecessarily. I feel very strongly about continuing forward with this and finally getting it done. I agree it's already been too long, but to start over is just going to unnecessarily extend it.
And I'm going to further object.
I wanna
I'm going to further object. I'm sorry. I'm going to further object to the cherry picking of what we read into the record. And since Janet Fricke is here, I would like to ask Janet how many letters were submitted on behalf of the last grant that was received, the $400,000 grant. How many letters were submitted from residents, from historians, from people from everywhere in support of, and I hopefully you have I mean, am I guessing, was it 25 letters, 20 letters, somewhere around there? So if we're going to cherry pick the letters that we're reading, let's read the letters, the heart and soul of Ridgewood. Let's read from the people. I just think this it's just a sideshow at this point. So can we just move on?
Yes, and I do just want to point out, this is the final piece of this project for the house. And as we've all said, we want this to come to completion. The last one is policy deed restriction for affordable housing units for Chestnut Village. This is on resale and financing, and I'll let Mr. Rogers speak to it as well.
This is part of the process in the development of affordable housing projects and deed restrictions with regard to the maintenance of the units as affordable units for a period of time. This one is for the Chestnut Village, the property built by Bolger over on Chestnut Street, and everything was in order, reviewed by our planner as well as our affordable housing manager, Piazzas and Associates, and everything looks good, and we're looking out to try and get the ones from the other developments. So that's where we are.
So do we have the jurisdiction to say we want it to be in for longer?
No, it's a set time period.
It's a set time period. I always felt that was kind of, unfortunate because they roll out of affordable inventory and then you're almost back to square one as you're going to have to keep doing this over and over and over again as
we will probably. I don't know that I'll be around, but we may have to revisit this at another time coming up in a number of years.
I know, but I think that's all these units that are built, I don't understand why they just couldn't be in affordable permanently. I think it's a terrible, terrible thing to put, to continue to just do this.
It was an incentive as part of being able to build higher density residential units. An incentive to developers to be able to develop properties that they own rather than, go drag it out through the courts, through litigation, and decide what might be best. So
yeah, but
it's part of it.
That's part of it, but it's not a part that we ever had the opportunity to negotiate. Because I actually remember discussing the special needs piece and whether or not, because even the special needs affordable housing rotates out after 30 years. And I remember saying, why can't we just make it permanent? Why not just make them permanent? It just seems so fundamentally wrong. But
And it's a statewide basis, and we don't get to decide what the incomes are for the different levels of affordable units. But and it's one of those items that fits right into that same scheme. So,
Were these 7 units always part of the plan?
in Chestnut Village, yes. Huh.
Okay, the next item is the 20-mile-per-hour CBD speed limit on East Ridgewood Avenue and the side streets in the CBD.
Okay. We talked about this 1 or 2 meetings ago, and I had mentioned to the council that we just can't unilaterally decide to lower our speed limits. And I told you that I'd research it a little bit further and get the information for you. And I was correct. We can't by ordinance just say we're going to lower them. We can't by resolution decide that we're going to take a few miles per hour off the speed limit that's set. There is a process that has to be that's involved with regard to getting speed limits set in the state, and to lower it below the 25 mile per hour speed minimum. Engineering studies have to be done by the town with regard to local streets, and if we were thinking of Franklin, which I believe is a county street, the county would have to do this. The engineering study has to be done in conformance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which is a set standard that looks at certain criteria for the establishment of speed limits. And then that study gets reviewed by the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation. So I've talked to a few people about it, and we've these studies can be done. In fact, I think some of them have been done on certain streets in the past. The backside is that unless you really have the criteria before you submit it to the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation, there is a chance, very limited obviously, that the speed limit may even be increased. But you've got to, in your criteria, it can't be based on perception. You've really got to do some traffic engineering information, and you have to write it in the proper way. And I think there's a gift, as there is with a number of things in terms of submitting it to the state, to make sure you've got all the information properly spelled out and all the data together so that you can put your best foot forward to try and get the speed limit lowered. And a lot of it has to do with, looking through the manual. A lot of it has to do with, traffic issues that have developed, whether it be motor vehicle accidents, whether it be pedestrian accidents. I know that we do have some criteria with regard to that that's already in our history on some of these streets, and that takes a little bit of time. But if it was something that you still wanted to do, what I would suggest is you have whoever wanted to really push this, have a conversation with Chris in terms of the criteria that he has to look at, how long it might take to do a study, what might be involved, if there's any costs involved, and then come back and we could resolve it. You could, if you wanted to still go ahead with it, approach the council to resolve to go ahead to look at these things, and then conduct the study, see what your results are, and make a determination as to whether or not to go forward with a DOT and then an ordinance later on. So that's the way I suggest you go about it.
which do you think takes longer, that or doing the bump outs?
Or getting streets paved. I don't know. Or filling up the Ridgewood Duck Pond. I don't know which is the longer one. But that's a question Chris can answer.
So what do we think?
I don't think it's worth pursuing.
It's cumbersome, too cumbersome.
Maybe
For
somebody
5
could
miles
take
an
it.
hour.
Chris has done it. Maybe just have a quick conversation with Chris, get his take on whether he thinks the criteria is there, or that this would be working with the county. I don't know what that's going to involve. I just know that it doesn't happen on the same schedule that we would like things to happen.
And maybe in that conversation we could discuss the possibility of bump outs, because one of the issues that we talked about here was enforcement. Bump outs are a self-enforcing speed reducer. Mm-hmm. So perhaps we can look at all the options available
Absolutely.
to make the speed slower, on East Ridgewood Avenue, and one might be much easier than the other. So I think Matt's suggestion is well taken to bring this up with Chris and get his opinions on how we might best skin this cat.
And it might not just be on East Ridgewood Avenue. You know, we've had accidents on Franklin also.
But Franklin is not our purview.
Oh, that's right. That's
Franklin's a county road.
True.
I mean, it doesn't mean that it can't be done, it's just an extra agency that you got to deal with.
It's just it will take that much longer than the study we're talking about on East Ridgewood Avenue.
But we already have a plan for Franklin that includes those safety features. So that's already been, I guess, approved because we have a shared service agreement with them. So it's just a matter of finishing up on.
It's not all the same safety features that you're thinking of, but
Right.
it has many safety
has many of
features
them,
that,
right.
once implemented and built out and constructed to see how that works, that may be the secondary thought, so.
Maybe it's worth asking the chief what were the contributing factors to accidents on East Ridgewood Avenue? Because if it's all distracted driving, well,
Yeah, I think that's all going to be part of that discussion and that study. And I think that's one of the points, that's one of the pertinent points that has to be determined that you would put into the information to go to DOT.
So Heather, perhaps you could touch base with Jackie and Chris and get
I'm gonna
their
do that.
thoughts on this and
Okay.
get back to us.
Okay. Okay, the next item is Board and Committee absence policy. The village is very fortunate. We have many talented people here who are residents who are willing to volunteer their time to serve on boards and committees. There have been some challenges because those appointed to boards and committees are often absent. It becomes critical before the Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Adjustment, Historic Preservation Commission, or the Library Board of Trustees, because quorums are needed to hear applications, to decide applications, and then also on other boards, it makes them less productive if they don't have full membership. So if there were an absence policy, and this is just for discussion, you may say if someone's absent 3 consecutive times, it might be 6, whatever all of you decide, then you would then determine whether or not that person would want to continue to serve on the board or committee. If the member had some kind of emergent health condition or something where, it was a short-term thing and they could say, yes, I won't be around for the next 2 months, but after that I think I can do it, then, perhaps that person would continue. If the member states that he or she will improve his or her attendance and they don't, then at that point, the council liaison could come back to the council in closed session, discuss it, and decide whether or not that member should continue. Again, it doesn't have to be this format. It's really just a discussion point.
Yeah, the 3 consecutive meetings, so on boards and committees, we'll take, for instance, if you have somebody who's absent 3 consecutive meetings for one committee, that could be 3 months. If you have somebody 3 consecutive meetings for planning board, board of adjustment, that could be, there are 2 meetings a month for board of adjustment. Sometimes they add the 3rd. They take that last. If there's a 3rd Tuesday, they take that. So the 3 and the 3 consecutive meetings for a planning board or a board of adjustment can be really significant if you're hearing applications that are, sometimes they require, on a use variance, a supermajority. And then if you're hearing applications that are extended, carried from one meeting to the next, and then that person's meeting missing. So missing meetings, it's a tough thing. And then you're relying on whether or not they're going to sign that they listen to minutes or read minutes or listen to the meeting, I'm sorry. So I think that, and I throw it out because I'm kind of more on the land use end of it. I don't know how the 3 consecutive meetings happen for Shade Tree, the REACT, environmental committees. I don't know how that would work for Parks and Rec or Fields Committee. Somebody misses 3 meetings, that means they've missed 25% of your year. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and when you're trying to keep some continuity and order and getting things done, I think that's a lot.
I think so too. And I don't think we should do this for any retributive reason. This is just, we have to be able to function. My question is the liaisons, because they're usually just sent by the other committee. So would we have the same program, 3 absences?
Sure, that's a good question.
For liaisons as well?
So, yeah, I guess so, because if by extension, this goes to a planning board, so let's just say, I know you have a planning board liaison to open space, and then we have a planning board liaison to Historic Preservation Commission. So, sure, I guess if that person were missing, we don't want them to be the liaison anymore. We want to replace that. So that would be like the communication from, let's just say, for instance, open space. You would say, okay, this is a problem, so then we would go back to the planning board with that, because that's actually a planning board appointment. So I don't know. I throw it out there. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
So it still should be, as it's written here, the council liaison has to deal with it with whatever committee or board that person comes from.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think if it's in an official policy, it kind of eliminates that gray area or any kind of awkwardness where, somebody misses a bunch of meetings and, do they have something going on or what's up? It gives you kind of the opening to call them and say, hey, what's going on? Per official policy, I have to ask to see, is everything all right? Do you want to continue? It's okay if you don't want to. We just need to know. So I think that would, alleviate some of the issues that we've had. I would say 3, I guess, is kind of excessive, but I think that would be, a good place to start. You couldn't really say 1 because, somebody, some comes up all the time, 1 time, or, 2 meetings. I don't know, still, some could come up, but I think 3 consecutive meetings, especially on some of them. Maybe the land use boards might be a little bit different. But, certainly if you miss 3 months of a meeting, because most of the other committees just meet once a month.
Yeah,
And, excuse me, I brought this up with Heather when I saw the number of people who voted on the hospital overlay. I forget if it was 4 or 6 members of a 9-member board with 2 alternates were there to vote on a really critical issue. And, we recently went out and solicited applications from residents. And we got a plethora of very interested, highly qualified people who were anxious to serve the community. And in terms of being retributive, this is clearly not, because when we talked about this, it was, okay, if somebody's going through some difficult time, there's an illness in the family, there's a problem, there's this, then that's why the council liaison will check with them, and if they feel it's appropriate, bring it back to the village council and make a decision. So again, everyone has times in their life when they can't make it. So I actually think that the 3 consecutive missing of a meeting standard is good. The only thing I would add to this is if someone misses 50% of the meetings for a year. And again, it will then be up to the council to make a decision. But again, they're all important committees, and there are some that are critically important. And we have lots of residents who really want to serve. So for those whose lives have changed and their interest in serving, which was once stronger, is not as strong. I understand that. Everyone's life changes. And that's why I think that Heather's memo here lays it out nicely, that the council liaison can have a conversation. I mean, that's really the first step here, is the council liaison will have a conversation with that member or those members, and we take it from there. And this is a policy that we can see how it works and then tweak it along the way if we find that it needs some modification.
So just a question for Matt, however. Land use boards have bylaws, and the attendance policy is actually baked into the bylaws on those boards. So I don't know if that's from statute or if that's
Well, the bylaws, the appointments for the planning board, zoning board are done through the municipal land use.
right, and then we
Done by the councils.
right, and then we adopt bylaws, but I'm not sure what we went through our bylaws, we redid them for planning board, I think 2 years ago, maybe, I don't know if you were there, yeah. But that's baked into the bylaw, so I guess the question is there anything in the statute that says that land use boards
There's
have a
no,
certain...
yeah, there's no
Yeah, okay. All right,
defined,
fine.
there's no defined time period in the statute or in the MLUL that says if this occurs, you got to go, or if this, occurs in consecutive times, you got to go. It's up to the
Okay,
council,
good.
so.
And I'll just
And
say...
the bylaws can't supersede it.
Right, fine, okay, so, and I'll just say, I agree that things happen. The challenge we were having is, and you get to the bottom of things, certainly we had someone who was pregnant and had a baby, and that's a good thing. And actually, she did write our historic preservation element practically in labor, so it was all good. But then, we have people whose work scheduling changes and they can't make it. So it is also a case-by-case basis, I think, too. So we want to be sensitive to that.
But I think besides the 3 consecutive, I agree with Paul, not on the 50%. I think more like 30%. If you miss 30% of the meetings in a year,
It's a lot.
that's a lot.
I'm good with that.
Just for example, last night we had a planning board meeting. There were 4 people out, 3 of which are out a lot. I wouldn't say they're out consecutively, but one meeting, yes, next meeting, no, next meeting, yes.
Well, we could even make it very simple and make it 3 consecutive meetings or 25% of the meetings over the course of a year, which turns out to be if you miss 3 out of 12, or in this case, if they meet,
That's 25%, right, twice a month.
Yeah, twice a month, then it's actually a very significant number if they meet
Right.
twice a month.
That's
And I know it's
20,
not the same in
right.
the summer, but let's just say for a moment it's 24 meetings. They've missed 8 meetings out of 24.
If you miss 6, that's
Yeah, 6.
25%.
Excuse me, my math is horrible. 6, that's a lot of meetings. So, yeah, why don't we go with 3 consecutive meetings or 25%? And again, the first step is a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
No one's getting kicked off.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that conversation will reveal something, whether it's I'm really not into it anymore, or you're right. I've been a little lax. I'm going to pay closer attention. Great.
Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll see if we can get that together by next week. If not, it'll be introduced in June, but I'll try for next week. So the next item is the Pride Day Committee.
I asked this to be put on the agenda because this is such an important element in our, it's become so important for our community that, like the 4th of July committee, like all the other committees, I would like to see this become a standing committee, that we solicit applications from the public, we appoint a liaison, and we run it like all the rest of our committees. And I think that would be a great way to get a wonderful cross-section from the Rainbow community and other supporters of the Rainbow community going forward after this year's celebration.
I
like the idea.
I would say maybe we need to have not just Pride Day Committee, and I'm going to share the reason, because I do agree with you. I think it's a great idea, but other things pop up on the radar, and last year was a little bit unusual because we had Pride Day coming up, and we also had a lot of crimes against members of the Asian community. So those, not that the two were totally unrelated, don't anybody misunderstand what I'm saying. So what we did was we had that, the Stop Asian Hate rally, and that was kind of like an unusual moment, and but it did require a very quick level of organization to put that together. So I feel like it shouldn't just be Pride Day committee, but it should be like an events thing. So if something like this kind of pops up, and then you always have the Pride committee running as the guarantee, but I think it could be other things too that pop up. This way you have an organization in place that can quickly help and kind of knows the flow and the logistics.
Yeah, and I agree with the concept. I think that that's terrific. I think that when you're soliciting applications for a Pride committee, like the CBDAC committee, in CBDAC we say, there need to be so many members of the business community there. So, I would say that there need to be so many members of the Rainbow community there, and that the chair of that committee needs to be a member of the Rainbow community. And that having been said, I don't know that committee is in the best position to put together a Stop Asian Hate rally, because for the same reason that you need people from the Rainbow community to put that event together. For an Asian hate event, you need members of the Asian community there.
I understand that, but I'm saying it's just a way to coordinate, because there are certain things that happen in every event that are necessary. It's the PA system, it's the kind of the logistics of it. So there's that structure of logistics, getting it together, and then there's the specific event. So I'm just thinking, is there a standing committee that helps to work on these types of events, and then that other piece of it? It doesn't matter to me. I mean,
and maybe we should do that, but I don't know that this is the place to
Right.
put that
Okay.
standing
All right.
committee.
Okay.
Yeah, I think traffic and signal kind of handles a lot of logistics for that, and the village manager and things like that could be, I think, handled internally if something throughout the year, whatever the issue may be, pop up. But if this is going to be kind of like a dedicated thing once a year, have one, committee focus on doing the celebration, annually.
And okay.
So if everyone's on board with this, what I would ask is, Heather, if you could put together a proposal for, again, I don't know how many people are on most of our committees. Is it 7? Is it 9?
I think it's about 9.
It's
Is it
about
9?
that.
Usually
About.
9.
Then I'm going to say that 5 members of the Rainbow, five of the members of that committee should be from the Rainbow community, and the chair of the committee should be from the Rainbow community, and that we solicit applications for that as soon as possible so that we can get going for next year.
Well, let's get through this year first.
Okay,
let's do that.
Yeah, let's finish what we have to do now, and then
Right.
we'll do this for next year.
Yeah, we can do
So
it for
is
next.
everyone on board with that?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay. Next one is pedestrian plaza.
And I'm going to recuse myself from this matter.
Okay. So I know Councilman Seaton asked me to put this on.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to get sort of an update of what's happening with the pedestrian plaza, and then, solicit comments and just see what the council's thoughts are on continuing the pedestrian plaza.
So the pedestrian plaza, as everyone knows, the village council actually never did anything with the pedestrian plaza. It was actually the Welcome to Ridgewood committee, and we extended it last year, and we did it, I believe it was once a month last year. To the actual, I think we did it for the 3 months, once a month, right, Heather? Is that accurate?
Last
We
summer,
did it from
was-
July through Labor
it was
Day.
every weekend.
Oh, every week.
July through Labor Day.
Oh, I'm sorry, the 8 weeks, the end, the
Yeah.
tail end 8
Right.
weeks, I'm sorry, yes. And that was actually over, really, with many in the business community, including landlords, objecting. And so this year, the objections are much stronger, and there's a demand to end the pedestrian plaza. So what I suggested was, why not just do, I think there was a suggestion to do a progressive pedestrian plaza, but the logistics, that's very, very difficult because of the way that would work. And I actually spoke to the person who suggested it, and she agreed, in looking at it, it would be very difficult. So the suggestion now is to do one big event with the chamber and the village working together. The problem is that the pedestrian plaza works for some businesses, but not all. And what happens with the pedestrian plaza is we choke off the businesses on the busiest day, the day they need to make their week, to make their month. They need those Saturdays. And we've actually had businesses who sadly have not even bothered to open up on Saturdays during the pedestrian plaza because it costs them more to open than it does to remain closed those days. So I've heard from a lot of business owners. Gary Colzer, from the president of the Chamber of Commerce, did a survey, and I'm hearing from landlords who are just saying you can't continue because you're hurting their tenants, we're hurting their opportunity to rent vacant space, and I actually can't tell you the number of businesses that have been saying thank you for even just the corrals. It was worked. The one thing we also noted is that in 2021 it was far less popular than it was in 2020. That was very poorly attended in 2021, and business downtown, business downtown is really very active. We have a lot of new business owners downtown, and even they are saying, what is this pedestrian plaza, because we don't want this. And these are brand new business owners. So I think what we've concluded, what I kind of just based on the feedback from the other businesses, from everyone, that we work on one big event and do a big pedestrian plaza with that.
But I find it hard to understand how that couldn't be beneficial to any business. You're bringing exposure, you're bringing foot traffic, and if you open a business in a busy downtown or a mall or somewhere with a lot of foot traffic, the idea is that even if they don't stop in, they get noticed. So if somebody says, well, I went downtown to Ridgewood and I had dinner, but I noticed some shop that I wanted to go to, and a couple weeks later, they go to that shop and they patronize it. It's exposure. It's kind of getting out there, and it's almost like a gift. You're bringing all these people into town, kind of for an event, and you could show off the downtown, put out your best window display, or even if you don't participate in it. I don't get how that could be detrimental.
So our business owners, I kind of equate this to, and I bring it up again, if I went to Kenilworth, and I'm not picking on anyone here, and I blocked Kenilworth from Spring to Ridgewood Ave and said, all right, gang, you only have a footpath. You no longer have your street. You no longer have your driveway. You're going to have to carry your packages. It's not necessarily, people would start screaming. Well, the truth of it is, the people that's being done to in the pedestrian plaza are screaming. They are very, very upset. And their business is hurting on the day that what we're doing is we're taking their business away on the busiest day of the week. Well, how does this work? Well, we'll look at it this way. Hackensack is a very good example. Hackensack was two-way back in the day, Main Street and State Street, two-way traffic. And then at some point, they switched to one-way. Main Street was heading west. I think that's west. I'm pretty sure that would be west. Anybody? It could be north.
It's
anyway.
north and south.
Right, it's north and south. It is. Okay, north. It is north. I'm sorry, heading north. So Main Street was one way heading north, State Street heading south. And they switched it back for a reason. They switched it back to two-way because the one-way hurt the businesses. There is something about vehicular traffic that actually helps businesses. It actually helps them be seen. It adds to the energy. And the largest, one of the biggest complaints is that there's a reason that the food court is downstairs in the mall and upstairs in Paramus Park. There's a reason the food court isn't in the main business area of the malls. And what's happening is these are becoming massive food courts, and the businesses are lost in that. They want to be made whole. They want to be made whole. They want these businesses are saying, we leased our space, we put our life savings into opening a business on Main Street. We did not open our business in a mall or a plaza. They didn't do that. And I just think, in fairness to everyone, I think we have to give them a break. I think, they're getting back on their feet. They hurt, as much as anyone else did. They're getting back on their feet. And I'm just not talking about retailers. I'm talking about salons, services, the threading stations, all of them. Their businesses are hurt when the road is closed off. You go downtown and talk to them. It's just the fact.
I have gone downtown and talked to them, and if it really were the pedestrian plaza that is the killer for business, we wouldn't be seeing a new florist open up within the pedestrian plaza boundaries on East Ridgewood Avenue. We wouldn't see Borrow Baby open up. We wouldn't see a new tenant in the Lucky Brand building. And we wouldn't have Envy that just opened up in the old Jekyll and Hyde storefront. The one business owner who came here to complain about the pedestrian plaza also complained about the kiosks, about 50-50. And so it was the kiosks that are putting off her customers as much as the pedestrian plaza. They are up against an awful lot, and if they don't come here to talk about what their problems are with the pedestrian plaza, then it's hearsay to me. And we do know from the residents that they overwhelmingly support the pedestrian plaza. We've received emails, they've come here to speak, and they're the ones who elected us. And that's why I'm in favor of continuing the pedestrian plaza more than once. Once will be a sad affair. It's going backwards. When I read the League of Municipalities magazine, they're giving awards to the towns that are pursuing the pedestrian plaza. We will be left in the dust. I don't want to go backwards.
Yeah, I've had a friend on the Hackensack Planning Board who said Ridgewood got it right, and he wanted Hackensack to try and look at some way to do it. Not permanently. I don't think we should shut down the street permanently, but I think it would make sense to do more than once a year. It's a home run. I mean, when we did the interviews for committees, a lot of the people, when we asked them, what do you like about Ridgewood, a lot of the residents came in and said they liked the pedestrian plaza. And, for a long time, there's been anecdotal evidence, I guess, of business owners said, well, yeah, a lot of people come to Ridgewood's downtown, but we don't get a lot of Ridgewood residents. So I think we inadvertently kind of stumbled upon a solution to that with the pedestrian plaza, because now, a lot more residents or a lot more Ridgewood residents are going to Ridgewood's downtown. I just see this as a home run. And again, it's foot traffic, it's exposure, it's almost like free advertisement. People come down and check out our downtown, and there's a lot going on. There's music, there's activity, it's crackling, it's happening. Like, come on downtown, we have a whole event for you.
So I'm sorry, actually, the music we have the music covered. We have music in the park. We're already scheduling all of that. We have music on the avenue. We have the night music. So we have all of those things in place. But I will say that some of the very stores that you just mentioned as coming and they're new are saying, don't shut the street down. They're saying, don't do this. They are, they're concerned. So they know that Saturday, and I'll say this, when you cut off the Saturday and make that a pedestrian plaza, for some business owners, you may as well have just shut the whole thing down permanently, because every single Saturday is permanent to them. That is the retailer's busiest day of the week. They need Saturdays. They need their vehicular and pedestrian foot traffic. They need both. And if I'm not just hearing it from the retailers and the business owners, I'm actually hearing it from some restaurant owners, and I'm hearing it from almost every single one of the services. And by the way, the one that complained about the parking, that's not the only one complaining about the pedestrian plaza. And I think that when you ask people to come here, and, you know, they're coming here, it's not just like one of us, a resident coming and saying, yeah, I don't like that my street's not paved. This impacts their business. So coming here to make a comment potentially impacts their business. They're not, I consider anyone who comes here to be incredibly brave, because then they are skewered in the social media world, and it's terrible. It's just a terrible thing. So I don't blame them. I say, you talk to me, and I'll work it out. So that's my.
I just out of curiosity, if we did a pedestrian plaza, who would pay? Where would the money come from?
Comes from the restaurants.
The restaurants pay
Yeah.
for every 100% of it?
Yeah.
That's how it's worked in the past, is that they've gotten donations to be able to run it. So from the restaurants, from the businesses, whoever it is who was willing to contribute. It's mostly the restaurants. I agree with Pam.
Okay. Well, that goes to show that it helps the restaurants, but it doesn't help anybody else if nobody else is contributing. But, I mean, I love the pedestrian plaza. It's fun, it's vibrant, it's great. But if it hurts businesses, how can we promote something that's going to help some part of the industry and hurt another part? It's unfair. I just, you know, I do think 2 weekends a year, you know, then we could really build it up. It would be exciting. It would be great. But having it like every weekend or for 6 weeks in a row, it's too much. It's not fair to ask of the businesses that didn't sign up for this when they rented their location.
You know, I always go back and think about when, you know, we did some parking restrictions on a street, and it was done for the intent of the safety of children walking to and from school. And before we knew it, we had people coming here saying, well, this person has to walk 100 feet or 200 feet or 300 feet to come to my house for lunch, and the cleaning lady has to park up the street. When you choke off a street, when you do that, you impact everyone in there. These are actual property owners. You know, we're very, you know, casual when it's somebody's property, but this is somebody's property. You're changing where their property is located, whether it's once a year. You know, we do it for the car show, we do it for downtown for the holidays, we do it for a couple of other events, but you're looking to change where someone's property is located. They pay taxes. They're property owners. They're property owners on Main Street, on Ridgewood Avenue. And you are taking those very same property owners and saying, yes, but the folks like this, so let's change the configuration of how your property is located. I think during our Welcome to Ridgewood meeting, someone drew the analogy of the malls and said, well, the malls do it. They tell everyone what to do, and then the stores have to comply. The newsflash is the mall owner is a landlord. We are not the landlords of these stores. We own a public road, and we have an obligation to be fair and treat everyone fairly and make them whole, keep them whole, let them all. The only level playing field is if everyone operates under the configuration they existed previously. That's the only level playing field. Everybody knew what they got into. Everybody knows their business. Let them operate their businesses. I don't understand why this is even, I actually don't even understand anything, why this is even a conversation at this point. We've heard from businesses, and to say that you aren't hearing businesses complain, I can't imagine that anybody went out into the real world and heard. I hear people saying, we love it. I hear residents saying we hate it. I have residents quietly saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I have business owners, I hear both sides of it. I hear restaurants saying, do this, do this, do this. And I hear one business saying, do it. everybody, all the other brick-and-mortar retailers and services are saying, please don't do this again. It hurts us. And for us, if we're really looking to encourage businesses and if we're sincere in trying to help businesses and wanting a vibrant central business district, then we have to give everyone exactly the tools they need to succeed. And if it's so much as one business, then shame on us. That's all I have to say about it. So, anything else on that pedestrian plaza? So I guess, Heather, we had left off our Welcome to Ridgewood meeting that you and I and Joan would work to see if there was some plan, and if we prefer that we come back to the village council with the plan, happy to do that. It would be something similar to, I thought we did an amazing job for downtown for the holidays. We kind of planned those trucks all sparkly and with the lights all over it. It was just an amazing thing, and village staff totally leaned in, so it was an incredible event. And we worked hard on that. So we would want to do something like big, if that makes sense. But if one doesn't cut it for Councilwoman Perrin, I guess then if everybody agrees one doesn't cut it, then why maybe we shouldn't even do that. Up to you.
Well, I'd be in favor of doing it at least once. If I'd be in favor of doing it more because, again, for the reasons I've stated. But
well, the one big one would be Touch a Truck, and we would bring in all the activities and dancers and musicians and a band and the whole thing, and it would be a big event. But again, I guess we'll bring that back and just share our progress with the village council. Okay. Is that? Oh, nothing on operations? We're going to go to the review of the May 11th public meeting agenda.
So we have several proclamations next week, proclaiming Emergency Medical Services Week, proclaiming May as Mental Health Awareness Month, proclaiming June as Pride Month, proclaiming June 5th as National Cancer Survivors Day, and June 3rd as National Gun Violence Awareness Day. We have no introduction or public hearing on ordinances for Ridgewood Water. We have resolutions authorizing pre-application to NJDEP Green Acres for the Linwood replacement well for both a major and minor diversion. The ordinances for introduction, we don't have any unless I can get together the board and committee absence policy within a week. We do have two public hearings. One is for amending vehicles and traffic for no left turn, Franklin Avenue, North Maple Avenue, and Linwood Avenue, and then amending Chapter 165 for rubbish, refuse, and recycling, the collection schedule and placement, and removal of garbage and rubbish containers. Resolutions include award of contract, disposal of ground yard waste and grass clippings as a Lakeview compost facility, Title 59 approval, and award of contract for tree removals in various locations, awarding contract under county contract. Actually, it's state contract. The drone purchase, award contract under state contract, replacement for the Mason dump truck. The award contract under state contract, the equipment for the Mason dump truck. Award contract under Sourcewell, online auctioning of surplus municipal property. Award contract under Sourcewell, triaxle truck chassis with Brandon dump body. Authorizing change order 2021 tree removals, various locations. Authorizing a change order for Valley Community Health for the public health nurses. Authorizing submission of application for DMHAS grant funding for the youth leadership grant. Rejecting the bids for the Zabriskie Shedler House restoration and rehabilitation. Authorizing release of escrow for the Benjamin. Authorizing request for proposal for energy consultant regarding municipal energy aggregation program. Authorizing the village engineer to execute the DEP Treatment Works approval permit application for the sanitary sewer collection for the American Dream Estates in Washington Township. Approving the deed restrictions for affordable housing units at Chestnut Village. And then also establishing the Pride Committee. Did you want any of those off of the consent agenda?
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Everybody's good?
Yep.
All right, with that, we'll go back to we're going back to public comment, not to exceed 5 minutes per person. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, Siobhan Cram, Winograd, 274 Ivy Place. Where to begin? Let's start at the end. First, I hope you can all see me. I am here in the first person. I am not going to speak about anybody other's statement, commonly known as hearsay. I'm here to speak to my personal experience, and since you've chosen to suspend hybrid access and cut off access to your community, I'm your public. I am shocked that during the pedestrian plaza discussion, the public wasn't discussed. You've had a clamoring from your public, the petition. Everybody loves it. Literally, there's been very little dissent. I feel very comfortable as a member of the public that your public loves this, and that was not even discussed. 2, I am horrified that so many third-party comments are allowed to come in here. And specifically, you want to talk about being skewered? Okay, try being me as a member of the public. I've been here. I've been skewered. From the dais, I've been called a liar. Being involved in the process means you get involved in the discourse, and it's not pretty. Not always pretty from your side either. So if people have a financial interest and they want to speak for their business, it should be made here as a matter of record. And not one business has come here and said they object to this in absolute objection. 2, I hope you understand with your committees that all meet that the blackout weekend for school, where a disproportionate amount of this community will leave, is the weekend you're thinking about in August. So that means every school-age child will leave. I own a home down the Jersey Shore. The highest rental for those homes are the first 2 weeks in August. And yet you're going to place it when, again, the public can't enjoy it. It's ridiculous. Your approach to our business community is antiquated and narrow, and it discounts every beautiful thing that we've learned from COVID. For the first time ever, our community was flexible, and we did things, and we did them out of necessity, and some really great things should have taken place and taken hold. 2 things that you've turned your back on. Access, hybrid access, allowing one more person other than me to call in here and say, hey, Village Council, we really enjoyed the pedestrian plaza. I'm just so taken back with the statements that were made here. Lorraine, when you're talking about who it helps me as a taxpayer. The more vibrant the business community is, the more that my taxes are offset. The more that people walk, the less heart issues there'll be in town. The less traffic there will be, the less likely that our children will be hit by cars. So who does it help? Yes, it helps the restaurants. And if they want to pay for it, go for it. That's great. Whoever wants to pay for it to make it happen should. I'm so taken aback at the discussion here and how you are calling on shadows and like kind of phantom citizens and phantom business owners. If people wish to advocate for this, they should come here. My second point is regarding the discussion on Pride. I think it's a great idea to open the committee up. I think all committees that represent minorities should be representative of those minorities. And I hope this year's Pride Committee is inclusive and has members of the LGBTQ plus committee residing on it. I'm really hopeful that they do, but going forward, they definitely should. What's shocking to me is that the committee you described that would foster Stop Asian Hate or Pride, you disbanded. That was Community Relations Advisory Board.
I didn't disband it. Ramon Hache disbanded it. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. I did not disband it.
I'd like my time stopped.
I did not disband it. Former Mayor Hache disbanded your crab committee, not me.
Not
Ramon.
my
Your
crab
Ramon
committee,
Hache
not
did
mine.
that.
I wasn't even a member.
I don't know.
Wasn't
I'm just
even a
telling you
member,
who
as
did it.
you've pointed out. Not my crab committee, the community's committee, okay? So let's be honest as we have these discussions. Pride should be inclusive. 2, Community Relations Advisory Board, why they're so beneficial is the village indemnified them. We had a pathway that when people came to us and said, I want to have a celebration or a protest, we would call Matt Rogers, we would call Heather. There have been many meetings where we helped people navigate that. So it's shocking to me that all these years later, after Mayor Hache, who was the mayor, disbanded it and everybody allowed it to happen, that we're calling for those committees to be created. I think that's a good thing. We actually are.
No, I think you're...
We actually
All right, just continue,
are.
so we'll get to the end of this.
That's fine.
Okay.
But, and then we'll have another conversation in a one-way. But I do think that the forum space needs to be detailed. I absolutely think it needs to be detailed. It should not be subject to one mercurial whim of one member of council of who gets it and who doesn't. I think this year is going to be a beautiful celebration. I think next year will be even better. And I think many people are clamoring for access to the forum space. And I think we've taken a long time to detail how to make that happen. Lastly, the point about the committee, again, I'm just going to go for broke. I can't even believe that Valley Hospital was discussed without a full planning board. The planning board meetings under, I don't know who, you or Ramon, are no longer broadcasted.
Okay.
That's
Thank
terrifying.
You. Thank you.
Christian Reinhardt, 359 Corona Place.
Christian, would you speak into the microphone?
Just pull it down
Sure.
a little.
Christian Reinhardt, 359 Corona Place. First, I would like to address the Pride Day Committee proposal. I think it's an excellent one. And the other thing that I agree with Paul's suggestion is that the committee should be presented mostly by LGBTQ plus community and as a major part of the committee with other persons involved as well. The chair of the committee should definitely be LGBTQ plus person. And as far as your comments on the last year's organization and everything in the committee, we did most of the work ourselves. I mean, so without any need to have somebody overseeing and everything else, we worked together, coordinating with the village, with the police and everything else. So, I mean, that's one thing that's clearly. The other thing that I would like to point out, I don't know what's the structure of this year's committee, but I hope that the LGBTQ plus community is well represented. Because it's really important part because this issue is going to be more and more important as the times are changing as well, I mean, so in my opinion. The other thing is the pedestrian plaza. It's definitely think it's a very important part that we have that because the traffic, as proven in studies, in towns that have pedestrian plaza on the weekends or even during whole year, I mean, like some places in Europe and here as well, the traffic for the businesses definitely increases. And by the way, it's not inconvenience to anybody because all the businesses can have their business running because we have an empty garage that's available to everybody that comes to town. And from the garage to the pedestrian plaza is just a short walk for any shopper or anybody going to the restaurant or anything else. As far as the pedestrian plaza is concerned as well, I think that limiting it to 1 or 2 weekends or whatever is definitely taking away from attraction of Ridgewood, because anytime, if you look in the past, whenever there's a pedestrian plaza open, the traffic is enormous. And it attracts a lot of people to Ridgewood. I know personally my friends that come from neighboring town to Ridgewood because they enjoy pedestrian plaza, the restaurants, the shops, and everything that it offers. So I think that it's very important that it stays. The other thing is when, this is just my personal comment, when Pam read a comment from somebody, it was questioned, why would that be important, and does it based on a study or something like that? For the businesses, you say those people don't have time, cannot come to the meetings or anything like that. That is not true. If you expect to have comments from the public, you should have the same thing from the business owners, not just what they told you or what you pass to the meeting. That's not how it works, in my opinion. The other thing is, really, it's respectful to hear both sides, and if you request that something is based on the study, the same thing should be based for the business owners and everything. So when you say you hear comments and it's important because those people cannot come here, it's the same. So both sides should be heard, and if you request that one thing is based on a study, then the other thing should be based on the study as well. So that's it.
Thank you, Christian.
Christian
Anyone else? No? Okay. No other takers. Hang on a second, Paula. Just at the.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to close public comment, and I'm going to. You go ahead, Paul. Go first.
Yeah. Thank you. Christian raises a very good point about members of the Rainbow community, and I'm curious. I know you put this committee together. I know you've been working very hard on this, Susan. How many adults on this committee are members of the Rainbow community?
So I'm just going to actually not address that comment or question. What I am going to address is last year's Pride Committee. Last year's Pride Committee was a disgrace, and I'm not talking about Christian. I'm talking about certain members of the Pride Committee who engaged in behavior that was so unconscionable that they would come to the microphone and use the word inclusive is astonishing to me. It is astonishing to me. And not you, Christian. I'm sorry. You're not in that. So what I will say is last year the Pride Committee asked for the village to fund it. Heather, you can correct me if there's anything I misremember. We did find the money to do it and asked that we be included in all email correspondence and meetings. I was summarily dropped from the email distribution list, and I had speakers from the LGBTQ community that I wanted to add, that speakers from the community that weren't friends of the people that were running it. And all I wanted to make sure is that everyone was represented, not just a certain group of people in that were friends. And it was thankfully Heather Maylander who noticed that I had been dropped from the list. And Heather brought me back in to an infamous meeting. I'm sure everyone, the people that were there, recall, with all sorts of crazy assertions. And it actually brings me back to the idea that I disbanded CRAB, because it's just another piece of contorted information out of the air that's simply not true. And ultimately, we revamped the list, the speaker list, to make certain that members of our community who were also members of the LGBTQ community were included on the speaker list. So I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense. I don't want to hear any of it. What happened last year was so outrageous that I made a determination that it was better that we create a committee and not allow this politicizing and exclusion of people for whatever purpose that people conjure in their minds. I don't know. But it worked out in the end, and we had speakers that people didn't know were members of the LGBTQ community, and unfortunately, one of them had a disparaging comment made to them because I guess they really weren't welcome to speak there either. So I'm going to call for and I just wanted to, one more thing, and I'm going to get off of that for a minute. Christian, I just did want, maybe you missed it when I said it, I stated the president of the Chamber of Commerce did a survey of the business as it relates to the pedestrian plaza. So yes, that has been done. And I do hear from lots of people, but we have to sometimes hear from people in different ways. And with that, I'm simply going to take a resolution to go into closed session. Thank you. No, I'm taking a resolution to go into closed session. Point of order. Point of order. I'm not getting into a poll. Point of order. Point of order. Resolution to go into closed session, please.
On this committee are members of the Rainbow community.
I am not being cross-examined by you tonight, Paul. Thank you.
Be it
Resolution to go into closed session. Resolution to go into point of order, Paul.
Of this committee. Mark Cantor, not a nameless,
Okay.
faceless person. And he told me, surprisingly, that there were no adult members of the Rainbow community. I know you put this together, so I'm wondering why you didn't include any members of the community.
Mark Cantor, I thought, was representing people in his family that were members of the
He
LGBTQ.
is not part of the
Well, then I'll
LGBTQ.
definitely have a discussion with him and ask him to remove himself from the committee. Thank you. Resolution to go
Be it
into closed
resolved
session.
by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on May 4, 2022, at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the fourth floor caucus room of Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal, O'Connor versus Village of Ridgewood, and personnel, professional appointment, village planner. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. And be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed?
All right.